come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
Live exclusively for WCPT World. Standing up and speaking out, here's Hal Sparks.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
To do the vibes.
Well, it should come as no surprise that we continue to have extraordinary weeks. We continue to have these weeks where just when you thought things couldn't get more kind of racked up with craziness, bizarre way, making it possible for all of us to have a new appreciation for how the news works, how news cycles themselves work, a new appreciation in some ways for embedded journalism and solid American journalism, and it seems in contrast that the president himself just has sort of an equal amount of contempt for the same, which should surprise no one, I suppose, at this point. I don't know what our surprise factor is for the audience these days but nevertheless, we have some extraordinary stories, and for this week actually is a very special show because we have our first call-in special guest in a long while, and with him he brings not just joy and good tidings, but actual prizes. We're going to be giving away some tickets to see Louis C.K. Louis C.K. Well, there's a show coming up I'm not supposed to say, so I won't say it until then. It's a surprise. I'm kidding about the Louis C.K. We're going to be giving away tickets later on the show, and you'll have to listen to the third block to hear them, and that's all I'm saying. Okay, so the interesting part of this week is, okay, so yesterday, just a little bit of backstory, everybody. Hi. Don't tell everybody in the chat room, guys. I'm kidding. All right, so yesterday, sort of on a whim, I rewatched All the President's Men because I've seen it quite a few times, and I'd actually tried to watch it about like a month ago or something, but it was so late at night that I midway through I'd seen it before, so I kind of passed out because it was like 2 a.m. And but while I was, and I almost passed out, not because I was, because it was slow or anything like that, but because I was so exhausted, and there was sort of a relentless nature to it. The emotional exhaustion of watching them go through this process. And there's a period in the movie where they're stuck, where they have no forward momentum when they're trying to break loose the story, and they go talk to Deep Throat in the garage, and he's kind of being cryptic. And ultimately, there's an amazing scene where Robert Redford is on the phone, and he's talking to this guy whose name was on a check that went to the Watergate burglars. There was a check in their account from this guy who was a Republican bundler. He took in cash donations from Republicans across the country, and in it he didn't want to be carrying around all this cash. This is what he told Woodward. I didn't want to carry all this cash around, so I had a cashier's check made out in my own name. Now, a cashier's check is as good as cash. I don't know what he's thinking in that regard. I guess it had his name on it, so maybe he had to show ID. And back in that day, it was a little more stringent. But you could fake a signature on the back of something like that and kind of be gone by the time people figured out the money was gone on a cashier's check. But I understand what he was trying to do in theory or whatever. So he takes all this cash that he's getting from all these different sources, and he puts it into a cashier's check. And he gives the cashier's check to a bundler that works for the RNC, or the committee to re-elect the president, really, is sort of private ancillary group. And it ends up in the bank account of one of the Watergate burglars. And when Woodward calls him and confronts him with this, he has this weird little panic for a moment, and he says something weird about, look, I've just been through a great trauma. My wife was just, my neighbor's wife was just kidnapped. And he goes, well, sorry, I don't want to upset you, and blah, blah, blah. And then click, he hangs up on him. So he decides to call the guy's boss. He calls the guy who was above him at the committee to reelect and says, hey, I just talked to this guy, and he sent you a check for $25,000, and somehow it ended up he gave it to you, and somehow when it left you, it ended up in the bank account of a Watergate burglar. What the heck happened? And this guy starts really pushing back. He's got a plan for this. This is something they're aware of. And then the other guy calls back and says, hold on a second. I'm sorry I hung up on you, and then starts giving him some details that actually move the story forward. Now, why is this important? Okay, so the issue of this, that part of it, that really cracked open. For me, that was the single detail that was, in modern life, would be the most glaring thing in the world. It is just, there is, pre-social media, back when everybody was doing things on dial telephones and things had to be Xeroxed, even in that case where you had the Washington Post and the New York Times, the fact that, it becomes in modern times hard to wrap your head around the fact that a $25,000 check given from one guy to a second guy ends up in the third guy's bank account, and that isn't the most explosive story, that the Watergate burglars got $25,000 from the committee to reelect President Nixon. And then the guy who gave it to them didn't even know what they were doing with it and cooperates. That would unspool the entire thing today. The ability to check and recheck against the internet, to have access to all kinds of stuff, our awareness of, and certainly post 9/11 bank rules would have made that red flagged on a bunch of fronts, right? So there was a that really stood out for me. And in reality, there is there's a parallel that's going on in terms of the Democratic National Committee has sued the Trump administration and the Trump campaign and the Russians and WikiLeaks and Julian Assange and 10 unknown Russian hackers, John Does they have them listed as, for interfering with their election, which parallels directly what the DNC ultimately did in the years in the Nixon Watergate scandal. Makes total sense that even David Axelrod and some other Democrats were saying, we don't want them to do this. This draws way too much attention, the kind of attention we don't want. It makes something that should be sort of mechanical into something political, and at a time when we don't want to do this. But in essence, as a legal strategy, it makes a heck of a lot of sense. It made a lot of sense during Watergate. It makes a lot of sense now. It also, in the threatening Mueller world where we are right now, this idea that things are, there's a very high stakes gamble going on internally in the president's head, apparently apropos of no one, that at some point he might gamble on firing Rosenstein and Mueller, getting somebody to replace, to kick out Mueller, and Sessions is now threatening to walk if that were to happen. And the president is apparently operating on whim at this point with almost no genuine legal direction. And if his tweets are any indication this morning, which I don't know that they ever are, since the man is a compulsive liar and sort of, I guess the most you could say about it is he believes his own press half the time. But the Democratic Party suing them in parallel to the Michael Avenatti lawsuit with Stormy Daniels, there is so much room here for very awkward discovery and available materials in terms of the people that are accused in the civil suit. And one of the weirdest things is, and we're going to talk when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about a little bit of this suit, but I also, the Rudy Giuliani addition to the Trump legal team is particularly curious to me, considering all the problems Trump has with all of his lawyers right now. This seems to make it infinitely worse by bringing him on. But in the parallel tracks of the Democratic Party and the Avenatti civil suits, the president seems to be tweeting back, writing back at them, saying, why won't the DNC let the FBI look at their server? This seems to be his running kind of response to, that there's something hinky because the DNC, when they were hacked, wouldn't let the FBI have access to their server. And this, I find this maddening because if you've been, there's so many analogies for this, but if you've been robbed and you accuse someone of robbing you, and you don't have to show them your taxes to prove you were robbed. You can simply show that you had something and they took that something. Even the attempt at doing it. If someone tries to jimmy your window, you don't have to show the cops the interior of your home to prove that someone attempted to rob you. It's bizarre that somehow Trump thinks that, because let's go about the legal precedent of this, that all you have to do from now on is attempt to hack or hack into someone's server, and you can guarantee that in discovery you'll get access to that said thing. There is no digital privacy anymore. That's insanity. We'll be back right after this. I mean, this is so hard to unpack. But the Giuliani part of this I find is stunning, bizarre, and overwhelmingly goofy. We'll be back. I had a whole Louis joke, and we had tech problems, so I was talking over myself and trying to fix digital, because I was broadcasting from the other computer, you guys, and I thought I had it all hooked up, and then Wirecast crapped out on me again. I do not understand what Wirecast's problem is right now. Like, zero picture. There's something really bizarre with it in YouTube right now. But, hey, Jamie White, thank you so much. Wow. For 420, that's great. Yes, Hal Victory, thank you so much. Nothing could be clearer. I mean, he would be, literally, Jared Kushner would be better off having Rudy Giuliani, I guess, affect the, work on whatever their political... Is this guy? They would literally be better off with Giuliani operating their, running their real estate issue on 666 Fifth Avenue. Because what ears are you wearing? What do you mean, these headphones? Or are you saying something about my actual ears? As a matter of interest, Hal, the check you're talking about is on display at the Nixon Library. I've seen it there. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, it's Kenneth Dahlberg, right? Can't stop lying. Thank you so much. Love you too. And I know for a fact your shirts and patch have gone out, because I was just in Vegas and saw them go out myself. So there you go. Hey, Julie. Take your time. It's all good. Good to see you. Sandra, oh, bless you. Nothing to say, Giuliani. Honest to God, this is it's the weirdest addition to his team he could possibly do. And then we got some stuff. Seconds. Okay, cool.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, mega worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
So the president tweeted out after the DNC filed this lawsuit, they tweeted out, "Just heard the campaign was sued by the obstructionist Democrats. This can be good news in that we will now counter for the DNC server that they refused to give to the FBI, the Wendy Wasserman Schultz servers, and documents held by Pakistani mystery man and Clinton emails." Okay, first of all, Wendy Wasserman Schultz, he fixed it afterwards. But good God, man. Wendy Wasserman Schultz. But this is weird. We can counter for the DNC server. Why would you think you could counter for a server to prove that something was stolen? All they have to do is show that the documents you took, you don't have to show them the rest of your documents. If you break into my office and you steal one file and I sue you for misappropriating that file, I don't have to show you the rest of my files. I can show you the gap where it's missing, but that doesn't apply in digital stuff. All I have to do is do comparative. Like, here's a digital copy of one of the emails that they've got access to, and this is how they got access to it illegally. Like, the idea that you would have to give them your whole server is it's maniacal. I don't understand his logic in this circumstance. It goes on and on. If someone is robbed at gunpoint, you don't get to hold a gun on the rest of their family. I don't. All right. Anyways, he can keep saying that. It's still gibberish. Wendy Wasserman Schultz is particularly funny. They fixed it to Debbie, in case some of you are out there on a limb about this. But he called her Wendy Wasserman Schultz. And I don't know who the Pakistani mystery man is. Maybe somebody in the chat knows that. Carl probably knows, if anybody. The Pakistani mystery man and the Clinton emails, whoever they are, they're brown, they're foreign, they're foreign invaders. I don't know who they are. But I want to thank Jamie White and Hal Vickery and Can't Stop Lying and Sandra and Billy in our chat room for their super chats. Bless you guys. Thank you so much. Now, this is the thing that I like. This is bizarre to me. The addition of Rudy Giuliani. By the way, after we come back from the break, and I was totally rigging with stuff, and I botched the joke. But I was going to basically say we have a comedian coming to town, and his name is Lewis, and I don't want you to get him confused with somebody and not want to go see him. And it's Lewis Black is actually going to be our guest in the next segment. And I blew the joke because I was too busy fixing all the tech stuff. Which happens every week, as you know. But it's so we can stream out. If you want to go to howsparks.tv, you can see the live stream there and join us in the chat. We would love to have you. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the show. Howsparks.tv will get you there. Infotainmentwars.com. Anyway, so this news comes out that Rudy Giuliani is going to be added to the Trump team, and he's going to negotiate in the next 2 weeks an exit from the Mueller investigation for Donald Trump. He is going to arrange for this all to be over, for this us to finally be through with this. Sean Hannity's fever dream that one day we will be done with this, so we can get on to more important things like prosecuting Hillary Clinton for not being in public office for 5 years. So, okay, this is the legal skills of former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani were evaluated, then mocked by a panel on MSNBC on Saturday. The former New York mayor is joining the president's legal team. He told the New York Post he thinks he can negotiate an end to the Mueller investigation quickly. He can close the deal out in 2 weeks, sure, if he's negotiating a plea bargain, suggested Rick Tyler. Here's the problem. So Rudy Giuliani goes on the news during the election and teases that there is going to be a revelation coming out very soon. He pulls a Roger Stone and basically says there's going to be very soon. There's going to be some news coming out that is going to shift the election. And it's and basically it ends up being a sort of a reference to the email dump. The problem with this is that if he had a behind the scenes conversation about what is effectively an illegal and I would argue treasonous act, if he is now thinks he's acting as Trump's attorney, He isn't. He can't. They are involved. They are co-conspirators. They literally were involved in conspiring to release these documents to sway an election while coordinating with either WikiLeaks or the Russians or both. Giuliani is party to this. He was, as a campaign member and not acting as an attorney at the time, was aware of this and passed it on, offered it up effectively as a warning on the campaign trail. He teased this fact, and in doing so, he's as involved in all this as anyone in the campaign. So the part that I'm curious about, and I wonder if we have any lawyers in the audience who can possibly either steer me in another direction on this or explain where there might be some wiggle room, but I just don't see it. If the guy was involved as a campaign, I guess just a spokesperson or as a representative of the campaign, but not as a lawyer, never as a lawyer up until now, if he was acting as, in this capacity, at what point does what he did during that process, which is under investigation currently, which is at the root of the entire collusion legal battle, if he's materially involved in that, if he becomes the president's attorney, you can't take a co-conspirator and make them your attorney to cover a crime after the fact. You can't you can't have a lawyer help you rob a bank and then after that hire him as your lawyer so that he can't turn on you. I mean, it cannot work that way. This part of it is, I find the most curious aspect of this entire nonsense, because if Rudy Giuliani is now the president's attorney, and he was involved in Russian collusion, effectively, by being involved in when and if WikiLeaks was releasing stuff, even if he wasn't even if he didn't directly have contact that they were doing it, if he disseminated this information, if he was part of the thread of getting it out, and the chat room seems to be debating this to some degree. Bannon is urging everybody to assert retroactive privilege. Yeah, like that happens. It's a brilliant legal mind and human gin blossom that is Steve Bannon, suggesting that everybody become attorney in retrospect, or have White House privilege. And Charles in our chat room is saying he can't appear in court but can give legal advice. I'm not quite sure if we're talking about in this particular way. Yeah, Rudy was a practicing lawyer in the 80s. More money in law. Okay, so yeah, there is a very distinct section of this, and we got to take a break. When we come back, we actually got an interview with Lewis Black. He's coming in October. We're going to be giving away 2 tickets after his interview to anybody in the Chicagoland area who wants to come and see the show. I myself am going to try to make it down there if I'm in town on that weekend. You know me and my travel schedule, and it's very seldom that I and another headliner are in the same city together because we're usually opposite edges of the world. But stay tuned after the break for our special interview with Lewis Black. We'll be back right after this. So, yeah, chat room. Okay, what? Is he the president's attorney or part of the legal team? Subtle difference. Hi, Julie. Welcome back. He's on the legal team, but he is spearheading it. Technically, I think Lewis Black fell in love with the beauty that is Joliet when he was here a few weeks ago. I don't doubt it. How could he not? I'll come to Fort Myers. Okay. Yeah, that's Seattle Suzuki. That is exactly my case. Giuliani can't represent him in court because he is likely a witness in the case. I think it's super. That seems super obvious to me. Yeah, can't stop lying. I agree. The idea that you could fire someone who's investigating you, and or your campaign, moves us from a democracy where the rule of law is paramount to effectively a dictatorship. That's just the banana republic idea. How do I keep missing you in Vegas, or was that to do? I wasn't there to do a show. Are we going to talk about Comey's interviews? Yeah, we'll bring that up. Lady B, how long is the interview? Did we cut it down at all, or is it a full segment? I think I tried to time it out where it's pretty reasonable.
It's about 10 seconds. I mean, 10 seconds. 10 minutes.
Okay. I was like, wow, we edited a lot. I should. Did I really swear that much? Or between the two of us, I'm happy about this interview. So we'll.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it actually.
I was like, oh my god, it's funny.
Yeah. The 10-second. It's the fastest thing. Basically, a 10-second interview would be with Lewis Black would be, and that's it. That would be the whole thing.
That would be good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, after the interview, we'll be giving away tickets. Anybody in the Chicagoland area, any of you guys that are calling in, number 5, it was pre-recorded. I did it on Wednesday because he couldn't do it this morning, and we wanted to do it for the station. So he's going to be giving away tickets that's on giving away like pairs of tickets on some of our other shows. So it's pretty cool. 10-second interview, go, and done. Got to shake your head and loosen your lips to do that. Yeah, I can't do it. My lips are far too firm. But I will let you guys know, as kind of a surprise, it's just for the chat room, a little bit inside. We are Monday. Entertainment Weekly is bringing the cast of Queer as Folk back together for a special issue. That the anniversary of the show. And it's not quite a double decade or anything like that, thank God, yet.
15 seconds.
Mm-hmm. But, yeah. Okay, 15 seconds. Here you go. Enjoy the interview, guys.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. We have a special guest right now. The powerfully talented Lewis Black is joining us right now. He's coming to town to do a show in October, and we're going to be giving away 2 free tickets today to that show. But the most important thing is that he's on the line with us right now. Hey, Lewis, how are you?
It gets better every day. We really have figured a lot of things out. We're really focused as a nation, and we really have figured out. We really have discovered new and better ways not to get anything done.
Yeah,
that's really
impressive.
What we're about. We're spectacular at it.
Now, I know that you handle stress well, and when you're confronted with new and interesting political shenanigans, that you take it, I think, better than most of us in stride. Are you close to hair on fire most days? Do you have freak out fatigue?
I was initially, only because people were so, dealing with audiences who were freaked out.
Right.
That's because they're sitting there, and they still are. I've said, I think the best way to approach this is, instead of turning the TV on, is just go to your burner and your stove every day, turn it on, and put your head down on it, and light your hair on fire, and then really, spend the day putting the fire out, because that's actually more real than what you're doing to yourself. And then at the end of the day,
than social media.
People say, "What did you do today?"
Right.
I put the fire, lit my hair on fire, and I put it out.
The Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, does not advocate such behavior. But going to the show is a good idea.
It's amazing. Yeah, please don't. And if you do that, don't talk to us about it,
right.
and seek some sort of mental health care immediately. But what's amazing to me is I started talking about that. I throw things out to talk about in my act and see if it works. And I said, this is really, I've gone too far with this putting your hair on fire, and the audience immediately gets it. They get it when and a burner, they start laughing.
Yeah. Right. No question. I think most of us also are just dealing with the fact that there's such a stack of stuff mixed, and it's such a hodgepodge of horrible. We might be bombed by North Korea. Plus, the president might lose attorney-client privilege on something that's a sexual matter. Like the variety of craziness. It used to just be one, right? You could pick one for a president. You're like, okay, this is the BJ president, or this one might actually start World War III. But we literally have it all in one right now. We have everything.
Now it's
every possible scandal.
And we've got, and who. And nobody takes the, and I hold the Democrats and the Republicans personally responsible for, every day I just think they should get up, the American people, and take what he did in the first 3 hours of the day. Mr. President, no, you have to stop this, and we're going to come.
Right.
Just take the phone away from him, and we'd be stepping in the right direction.
That literally the wrestling phone away from Grandpa scene. That's where we are as a country at this point.
Yeah.
We
are.
But the interesting thing is, I thought you were actually going to go. I think the Republicans and the Democrats should get up, go to their stove, turn on the burner, and not put it out. And then they should learn to put each other out, and that would be the trick. The only
that's it. Yeah, that would be the beginning of bipartisanship.
That's right. Set their hair on fire, and the only person who's allowed to put it out is the other party, and only if you pass a bipartisan bill. He's like, yays get their hair put out, nays don't. And the president, of course, I guess, is on fire the entire time until he signs it. Right.
And in the meantime, we get no facts anywhere. Try to find a fact about anything. All they got is fake news and fake facts and fake ideas.
Right. And do you find, because I find that the facts kind of stare you at the face, that people just drive right by them as if they don't exist. That facts are kind of like giant pile up on the freeway. They look at it kind of and then continue driving. There's no connection.
Yeah. No, there is none. And they go, it's kind of like you give a person a fact, and it's so. Mm-hmm. Really?
Yeah.
What am I
don't feel that way.
To do with that? Yeah. And it is. When did facts become something that you feel about, or science become? I said, what I really have felt is that one of the things that we've done is we tried intelligence to be the driving force of the way we accomplished it. And really didn't get a lot of stuff done. And so finally the American people said, let's try stupidity. And that's where we're at.
Sure.
To get rid of science, to get rid of facts.
Yeah, because the moon and Wall Street and the Mount Rushmore and the biggest dams in the world and, effectively world peace, post-World War II, all these things we facted our way through are completely useless. We should now just put on blindfolds and stagger towards hope.
That was very good. It's a fun way to start everyone's day.
That's right. Yeah, good morning. Let's all put on our blindfolds and stagger towards hope.
Hope.
Those of you who live near a freeway, right. So, and I guess the big question is, and I get this one comedically myself, is that is political comedy too easy or too hard these days? Because it's so absurd that you either feel like you're just picking up rotten fruit off the ground and going, here, make pie, or I have to dig so deep into this stuff because it actually is more complicated. There actually is stuff, worth joking about that people are on the edge of knowing but don't quite know they know, so you drag it out of them.
Yeah.
What's your feeling?
My feeling is that he is to comedy as a stroke is to a nap. That's
Right.
it's just an overload. There's nothing. We are really at the point. We live at the intersection. As soon as he started running, as soon as I saw him with Sarah, what's her name, Sarah Palin, on CNN, and I looked at that image and I thought, we've now reached the intersection of reality and satire. They're the same thing. It's exactly the same. I'm staring at that image and I'm going, how am I supposed to make this funnier? And then you turn on Saturday Night Live. Just didn't even write most of what's coming out of her mouth. It's what Sarah Palin said. Well, ball game's over then, isn't it?
That's right. That's right. And with Trump, he's basically a male Sarah Palin with billions of dollars, because we'd prefer billions to breasts, I suppose, no matter what. Ultimately, they were like, how can we find a male Sarah Palin that is even worse for women than getting her in office? So
and a businessman.
So
the only man who's a man who bankrupts 2 casinos and they can call him a businessman.
Yeah, right. So I will call BS on one thing, just with you, one thing, and that is the show is in October, and that obviously means you have some version of hope that we will get through the next 6 weeks at any given time. That you are booking shows far enough out that you actually think we'll be alive.
We're not that lucky.
Yeah.
There will be no end. We're not that lucky.
That's right. I believe this too. I believe that this goes on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah, I mean, it's that thing. It's like when you take, as I did when I took acid for the first time, and I went, oh my God, this isn't working out the way I thought, and it's never going to end. And that's the way I feel now.
That's amazing. And how great you would try acid right before this interview, which I think for both of us is a great just lesson. Louis, I will let you go because I know you have more of these to do, and I bless you for coming on our show in the first place. Chicago is lucky to get you. We'll give away 2 of these free tickets, and I can't thank you enough for coming on the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. It means a lot. And our chat room loves you and adores you. So, I will do my level best to be there myself. So,
well, please do, and come backstage and say hey, okay?
I insist. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, please. Ladies and gentlemen, the fantastic Louis Black. Someone who I think gets younger every day. We'll be back right after this. See ya. We'll be back right after this. And we're giving away those tickets, so get on that line. Caller 5. Lady B, I don't know if that last little sentence got in there, but it didn't matter. So whatever works. I don't know if my mic was live or not. So if so, I was magically double laughing on stuff. Thanks, Hal, Vickery. I appreciate it. Yeah, it turned out pretty good. I still have to order my Louis Black bobblehead. They sold out at the concert. Oh. Louis Black, as heard on the rant, is due. Yeah. Thanks, Natalie. See, look at that. We got actually had a real interview. I got the shirt pack, which I love. No patch, though. Oh, the patch coming afterwards. Should I email Summer back? No, it's coming. I think it got mailed out a day later is all. Yeah, but it's on its way. Cool. And we threw in an extra shirt because you had to wait. Sorry about that. So you tap the bobblehead and Louis swears out loud. That's hilarious. Louis is obviously doing the free Facebook live streams. Oh, that's cool. Great interview. How like a real journalist. Well, thanks. I knew I only had a short window, and I knew I had to fit it into one segment, and I knew we were gonna I hate when I do them and they get edited for time. So I was like, how do I, literally control this as if it were live? Because if you did it on the show and it was live, I would be able to watch the clock and know, in this time. But basically, I was like stopwatching it in my head. Oh, you're talking about the Barbara Bush. Denise in our chat room was mentioning the Barbara Bush funeral that's going on right now. Top hat with a WordPress in the brim now. That's good. It's a good idea, Brad. I should do that. Can't sleep, need patch. Okay, Maureen, it's coming. Summer and I got... Okay, thank you. Summer and I got together this weekend, and one of the things we worked on was smoothing out the... and thank you so much, Maureen. And Mark. I don't know that I got a chance to say thank you to Mark, so and Billy. Let's see. Did I say Billy? I think we got Billy on the other, but I'll make sure.
Whoa. Oh, mercy, mercy me.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
So that was a special treat. We obviously, for those of you that have any ears at all, we had to pre-tape that interview because of Lewis's schedule, and I wanted to have him on the show because we love him dearly. And you can tell that my voice, that I had, that was done really early in the morning, and after I had sang for like, I'd sang Cinderella and White Lion the night before at the Ultimate Jam night at the Whiskey. So my voice had been through a cheese grater for that one. But that being said, doesn't downplay any of the affect of it at all. And I'm very proud to say that we're going to be giving away 2 tickets to his show in October. So 5th caller right now, Lady B, let me know when and if we have those folks. And who they are, and I'll just get their information, and I'll just give out their name and congratulate them when we have that and stuff. So 5th caller right now, 2 tickets to see Lewis Black in Chicago in October. And so let's and by the way, I also want to thank in our chat room for Mark and Maureen. Thank you so much for your super chat, and Billy. Really appreciate it. And he's giving it in terms of the Hal Sparks Fund for Sean Hannity's He's Not My Attorney Claiming Attorney-Client Privilege Fund. This is one of the things that really stands out to me, is this idea that Rudy Giuliani, as a co-conspirator, as a Trump campaign surrogate, tipping his hat about it, and this was specifically about the FBI leaks, for example. He was talking about basically coordinating something that may have been an illegal act in an attempt to sway the election. There is no point where what he did, if it becomes questionable, if Mueller folds this in, he's a witness now. He's actually, and at best, he's a witness. At worst, he's actively involved in the case itself. He is a co-conspirator. He could be flipped himself. Now, then, this week, I don't know if anybody got to catch the weird, like, rambling Trump tweets where, on the one hand, he was, and this is so bizarre, kind of running interference for this idea that that Cohen is going to flip, right? This is the that this is the prevailing story right now that's going around, is that he is that something is going, that will be a factor in Cohen finally saying he's had enough, and it will more than likely be a prison sentence presented to him of over 15 to 20 years. There is no... Okay, first of all, the idea that Mueller, with a properly executed search warrant, and that was vetted more than any other search warrant probably in history because it was for the attorney of the President of the United States, that jumped through so many hoops, that the idea that he needs Cohen to flip is stupid. It's absurd. The material is already there. The only thing that they benefit to some degree with Cohen confirming the stuff that they found, but you don't need him to confirm it. You don't need somebody to confirm that the murder weapon is theirs if it has their fingerprints and the victim's blood on it and it was found in their house. This idea that you would need somebody to flip, it actually operates on this idea that Trump is ultimately the trigger man, and that the getaway driver would flip on him. This is kind of the standard way that where you're working out how you're going to wrangle up a group of criminals, right? And in this particular instance, thank you, Natalie, for the super chat. Really appreciate that. That's fantastic. The idea that they need Cohen to flip is goofy, I find. It seems absurd on so many fronts. And then, so Trump today rolls out the New York Times and a third-rate reporter named Maggie Haberman, known as a crooked H flunky, who I don't speak to and have nothing to do with. And there's, of course, pictures of them hugging in the White House because he's with his thumbs up and he calls about them all the time, are going out of their way to destroy Michael Cohen and his relationship with me in the hope that he will, quote, flip. They use non-existent, quote, sources and a drunk/drugged-up loser who hates Michael, who people believe he either means Sam Nunberg or Roger Stone, both of whom have denied that today, but whatever. Who hates Michael, a fine person with a wonderful family. Michael is a businessman for his own account, lawyer who I've always liked and respected. That's such a weird sentence. Michael is a businessman for his own account / lawyer who I have always liked and respected. He means of his own account. Michael is a businessman of his own account, meaning like he is a businessman on his own and a lawyer who I've always respected. But this for his own account, I don't know what that is. It's toilet tweeting language again. Most people will flip if the government lets them out of trouble, even if it means lying or making up stories. So, wow. So anybody who is a witness in a RICO case or against other criminals now has the president of the United States arguing that the government is making them lie. That everybody every getaway driver, the only reason they flipped is not because they were party to a crime, participated in that crime, were caught participating in that crime, but that the overwhelming pressure of the government was so much that they just had to, anyways, even if it means lying or making up stories. So basically, the entire foundation of our legal system is based, according to Donald Trump, on people will lie and make up stories. Okay, sorry. I don't see Michael doing that despite the horrible witch hunt and the dishonest media. Sorry, I don't see... Sorry? What? Sorry, I don't see Michael doing that? Well, guess what, buddy? A, he doesn't have to. Michael Cohen does not have to flip for Mueller to get all the information he has. The only thing Michael Cohen can give them that they don't have is stuff that wasn't on paper, which you will push back against in court, I suppose. But or if he has a coded or or he's got another set of books hidden somewhere, that kind of idea. But this guy's not that smart. They got all of his devices. They've had a wiretap on his phone, and they've been monitoring his email for months now. And thank you, Say What, Milkman Norm, and Akf all have joined in the super chat. Bless you guys. Thank you so much. And Natalie, wow. Natalie, of course, who, those of you who saw that Maddie the cat's catnip freak out on 420, she fostered and then adopted one of Maddie's litter mates. When my girlfriend was fostering cats, and she's looking to do it again. There might be another batch coming. Those of you that missed out. And so thank you sincerely, you guys. So Donald Trump, and this took him 3 tweets. This is 3 hours ago. This is this morning, okay? this morning, on Saturday, is he at Mar-a-Lago? I mean, is he just, when is he not, I suppose? But this idea, that first he attacks Maggie Haberman and he attacks the New York Times, and then he basically spends the rest of the time, he tries to butter up Michael Cohen, and then in the end says, sorry, I don't see Michael doing that despite the horrible witch hunt and the dishonest media. None of that matters. Your idea that the Mueller investigation is a witch hunt is immaterial to the fact that the Southern District of New York raided his office. The Mueller investigation handed this over. It's outside the purview of their investigation, so they handed it over to the Southern District of New York because they found so much criminal evidence. And they said, this isn't part of our investigation. This is in your jurisdiction here. So the witch hunt concept that he's throwing about is what it is. And then the dishonest media. Well, the media has the media has nothing to do with the fact that Michael Cohen is guilty of so many things that the Southern District of New York was able to literally get a federal judge to sign off on a warrant and the DOJ to sign off on a warrant of Donald Trump's personal lawyer. He was involved in so much stuff, and it was so obvious, and they had so much evidence already that they were able to get a warrant through the regular process. This wasn't slapdash. This took time. They got an initial warrant because of stuff that they had heard from him that was that involved criminality. They got new information from Michael Avenatti, clearly, in their discovery and in their just legal back and forth in this circumstance. They presented financial evidence and copies of the NDA and the creation of the Essential Consultants, LLC, that had financial crime written all over it. There was this whole idea that... and you could argue that Cohen himself literally linchpinned the entire investigation into him simply by saying, I took out a loan on my house and I paid for this hush money out of my own pocket by taking a loan out, and the president never knew anything about it, and I did it just because I love him. 10 days before the election. The fact that he went out and said that, if he'd have just kept his mouth shut, arguably they wouldn't have been able to move forward on this search warrant. But the fact that he added this extra information where he said, no, I borrowed money against my house, and just because I was protecting the president because I love him so much, effectively is an in-kind campaign contribution because you were running interference for him and it cost you money. $130,000. And I don't even think that's the worst part of this legal case. I think for Michael Cohen, the Keith Davidson angle, which we talked about last week, which people just started picking up on, if you'll notice, in the last 2 days, and we were talking about it last Saturday, is, I think, the one of the biggest holes in their argument, and presents the most legal jeopardy for Michael Cohen. We'll talk about that when we come back. It's the House Sparks Radio program, mega worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Lady B, did we get a fifth caller? Hope so. Cool you? What? Cohen has family connected to oligarchs, and money is one reason they say Trump wanted to work with Cohen. No question. It was 100. I thought I heard there was a $129,999 payment made to Cohen because $1 difference is the perfect way to hide it. That would be... Really? If you could find a link for that, I'd love to see it. If you could tweet it to me or something like that. Because I have a hard time wrapping my head around that. let's see if that shows up. If I do. They reimbursed. Wow, you're right. Not even $1. $129,999.72. Wow. Well spotted. Can't stop lying. Anything over $10,000 has to be reported to the government. Right. $10,000 in the bank has to notify and flag. Right. I found it. Thank you, though. In the Inquisitor, there's a bunch of there, yeah. Huh. Hmm. Yeah. So Susan Simpson on Twitter caught this. She's an attorney in Washington. Whoa. And if she spotted this, this is exactly where the warrant came from. Yeah. I'm checking this now. This is stunning. This is, yeah, hilarious. Who was winking at the funeral? W? Oh, well. And Carl, you're right. Just follow the money, William Goldman. Yeah, because that line, you know that better than probably anybody, wasn't actually said by Deep Throat. That was a line that William Goldman wrote to kind of tighten the script around this. They gave and it made wasn't even in the book All the President's Men. Goldman added that to kind of shorten, to refine the argument. And it's become, a rallying cry for this kind of stuff.
Seconds.
Cool. That's right. Failure is not an option. It was never said by Gene Kranz. Right.
to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Damn puss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
I gotta lay some praise on our chat room. I gotta do it right now. Not only do they support the show almost exclusively through our super chat, they really do. I wouldn't have all the gear that I use to shoot the show and present it to you guys and get it on the air and all that stuff without them. And they literally, as Wirecast failed me, were responsible for us being able to get the software we use to stream called Mimo Live. Like, we jumped on that because they gave us that ability to do that. I love them dearly. I'm so lucky to have them in there every week. The Blue Patch Brigade is invaluable to the show. But not only that, but occasionally they'll spot something that, you know, I don't even know that the rest of the media has picked up on yet, and we'll kind of, you know, we'll have this sort of generalized brain outsourcing that happens, that is really impressive. And one of our chatters had mentioned, that in this $130,000 payment, that, you know, I think we all, when we heard about the $130K that was floated around, that was just, you know, the idea that Michael Cohen just did it to be a bro, and it was kind of weird. You're like, okay. But then this guy owns a lot of real estate. He's, you know, he hobnobs with all these rich people, so therefore he must be rich, and therefore, thank you, Julie, for super chatting right as that, just in celebration of the entire chat room. Bless you, thank you, because not only does she give to the super chat really regularly, but she's also one of our moderators, and between the two of them, her and Carl, they do great work for us troll hunting. And thank you, James. Wow, I appreciate that. So the this idea, like when a lot of us heard that Cohen had paid this money out of his own pocket, the reaction for a lot of people was, well, he's probably rich and he hangs around with Donald Trump, and this is kind of a moderate amount of money for somebody like that. And maybe he did. Maybe because he's nuts and he's sycophantically in love with Donald Trump that he paid this money himself. And it was weird, but I wasn't that surprised when I heard it. It's like hearing that one of Bloomberg's buddies had done something like, or the kind of money these people have. That's not that odd, right? Meanwhile, then we find out that he took out a loan on his house to the tune of $130K to pay for this after he opened up this LLC. And that's when it started to stink to high heaven. Like, okay, first of all, why do you have to take a loan out to do a favor for a guy who's a billionaire? And if you're not expecting to get paid back or gain financially from the circumstance, even in kind of a roundabout way, what are you thinking? I mean, and then the other thing is, oh, maybe he's like Jared. He's like a second family member. Well, then we find out he's not. Trump treats him like crap, apparently. Mocks him for paying full price for some of the Trump properties he's bought. And apparently in Trump world, that's a huge insult. That you can't even get a cut rate on stuff, right? And then a Twitter user named Susan Simpson points out, she tweeted out, something I'd love to see a reporter as. So Akth in our chat room mentioned this. Thank you, Carl, for the Cohen is a going fund. Thank you for super chatting. So he goes, something I'd like to see a reporter ask Donald Trump about. 1, Cohen formed EC LLC on October 17th, 2016. 2, the contract provided for EC LLC to pay Stormy Daniels $130K by October 27th, 2016. So the contract, he formed it on the 17th. This was all being negotiated. She would receive her money by October 27th, 2016. So let's reinforce that. Let's understand that. He forms it during the negotiation to settle to keep her quiet. The money that in the contract says it will be paid by October 27th, 2016. And allegedly, this is when Cohen says, I took my own money, I took out a loan, and I would do this. I would give this. Okay, so between October 17th and October 25th, the Trump campaign made payments to the Trump Organization properties. So let's separate the Trump campaign as a business entity from the Trump Organization that owns and operates all of his secondary businesses. The Trump campaign, they funneled money out of the campaign as reimbursements to the Trump companies, and they added up exactly to $129,999.72. It's what, 28 cents shy of $130,000? And then she updated on October 26th, one day after the Trump campaign completed a series of disbursements to the Trump Organization hotels that totaled $130K. The bank emailed Cohen at his TrumpOrg.com email account, confirming that $130,000 for Stormy settlement had been deposited. Good afternoon, Mr. Cohen. The funds have been deposited into your checking account ending in 1897. Best Lizzie. So, if a Twitter user found that scanning these things, and that, so this whole thing is supposedly not going on in coordination. That Trump did not know about this payment. He did not know any of this money was going anywhere. He did not know that that Stormy Daniels was going to be paid $130,000 and not tell her story, right? He didn't know this. And you'll have to ask Michael Cohen about that. I don't know anything about this. And then it turns out that Michael Cohen says, no, I took out a loan on my house to pay that. I just did it to be a bro. And then it turns out that he forms this company. In the contract says, okay, in 10 days, you sign here and, on this contract, and in 10 days, you'll get your money. And then between that time, the formation of ECLLC and the 25th, the Trump Organization pays, the Trump campaign pays the Trump company $129,999.72. And then on the 26th, a day before the check has to go out to Stormy Daniels, a day before she's paid, and a day after the money came into the Trump Organization, there's an email saying, "Good afternoon, Mr. Cohen. The funds have been deposited into your checking account." Ending in 1897, $130,000. These guys are morons. This is the worst Are they just so used to getting away with it that they don't even try? This is, this is ridiculous. I don't understand how, well, I do understand it. The problem is New York real estate is so bogged down in hinky money all over the place that there's been a reticence, much like the too big to fail reflex after the 2008 crash, that if we pull this thread, the whole thing's coming apart. And we can't afford to do it because it will literally wreck the economy. There are so many embedded crooks in this that trying to get them out will literally destroy every good piece of real estate in the city for a period. It's almost the same thing that happens when you find out that a bad lab tech or a bad cop or a bad prosecutor has been engaged in some shenanigans over the years affecting people's prison sentences, and they're afraid to go after them, not because there should be justice for the people, or there shouldn't be justice for the people that were affected by this person, but because a lot of people who are in jail for good reason will also get out. They'll use this as a technicality to get back on the street, and there's a real concern, and I think in New York, there's been a lot of that over the years. There's been a lot of fear that if we go after all the Russian and Japanese and Chinese money that's flowing in through all these odd sources, that everybody who does what regular investor groups, pension groups and all this stuff who buy large pieces of real estate as part of their portfolio, they're going to have a wrecking ball taken to their entire situation. So they either soft pedal or ignore the entire thing. And so they've taken advantage of that for a very long time. The Trump organization in particular, and Michael Cohen. And I think that's what made them sloppy. I think if they'd have stayed in New York, they rode this whole thing out. Never would have gotten busted on any of this stuff. But because they tried to take a slice of power that was a full order of magnitude higher, the blowback is something they were not prepared for. And this slapdash ridiculousness that they were used to operating in has a new level of scrutiny, and it is eating them. Because this is the dumbest Keystone Cops bit of garbage conspiracy that I've ever seen. This is hilarious. And thanks to Act in our chat room and everybody else for pointing this out as well. This was dumb when we started the show. It just got fundamentally ridiculous. This is now Alex Jones dumb. And that says a lot. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Wow. I mean, this is... Thanks, Michael. Just using the word hinky. Yeah. I picked that word up. I heard it in Chicago when I lived there every so often. And then, it never became part of my lexicon until The Fugitive. Hinky. We say hinky. Well, don't... What does that mean? Hinky. Weird. Strange. We'll say weird or strange. Why do you say hinky? And hinky became a word. They're old Queens guys who grew up on Scorsese movies. They think they're gangsters. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to talk about Alex Jones and Sandy Hook.
Seconds.
Okay.
I'm Dick Kay from Back on the Beat, and here is the Mega Worldwide Radio program with Hal Sparks.
So, speaking of morons who have no idea how to even be selfish right, this week's, the Alex Jones blowback is something that's just hard to avoid lately. Some of you may know that through a a mutual friend who knew Alex back in the day. I was actually on Alex Jones's show once, and my buddy got him to admit that Obama wasn't evil, and I got him to admit that the Affordable Care Act had some good points, or vice versa. I forget now. It's been so long. But we each got, we were both amazed at what the concessions he gave at the time. Of course, now he's gone full, neo-Christian Trumpster. And then he has, after the Syria strike, the second one, because it goes against the Russian narrative, he literally has this cartoon breakdown, because I will never accuse Alex Jones of a genuine moment ever, having been around him, where he literally goes, "It's just so bad. It's so bad that Trump is. It's so bad. If he'd have been a piece of crap from the beginning, it'd be one thing, but he was doing so good, and we sacrificed so much." He didn't sacrifice anything. He's making millions of dollars during the Trump years, running these conspiracy theories and being a jerk. And let me explain something, by the way. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that governments and business conspire together to do awful things. If people can do it, groups can do it, it's not surprising or whatever. But the level that he puts it on is kind of an order of magnitude beyond belief. And he does it on purpose to gin up support amongst a certain group on social media and in other areas that have money to burn and morals that they can easily toss aside at any given point, because they'd rather feel right than be right, right? So after his big, first of all, the Syria thing, let's be abundantly clear. I am immediately suspect whenever we use any kind of motivating point to go into any kind of war theater or justify us going back into or being more involved in a foreign conflict. That being said, I don't think us being involved in any of them is bad. I think one of Clinton's biggest regrets in his presidency was not being more involved in Rwanda and having done something which could have stopped that genocide. And I think, he talked repeatedly about how that haunted him after the fact. And so this, it's kind of nationalist, turning America into a gated community, which is the Trump Alex Jones plan. Let's be abundantly clear. This isn't about, they don't want us messing around in other people's countries. They just want to wall the place up and shut the door. It's castle time for them. But the idea that, in Syria, in this situation, we talked about this a little last week, but this idea that this absurd notion that Assad was winning, and so therefore why would he gas his own people? And that, why are we upset about biological and chemical weapons when we're not upset about conventional ones? First of all, we are upset about conventional weapons in general, but with the use of conventional weapons comes a financial and environmental price that a lot of warlike powers aren't willing to pay. So the idea is that if you can, the price of invading a nearby country, a la Germany in the in the 30s, the price of doing that is that you're going to have to blow up all the buildings and the roads, and if you want that stuff, it's going to cost you a lot of money to rebuild it later. And so there's an element of, is it worth spending all this money on bombs and fighting and bloodshed if ultimately all we're getting is land? Is the land that valuable, or is what we wanted, the internal infrastructure of the land, is that what gave it its value? In an increasingly financially related world, the idea that you're just going to claim farmland for resource or whatever, the return on investment part just falls apart. If you're creating, creators that are dusted with, depleted uranium, it doesn't, it stops making sense at a certain point, right? And I'm not justifying it. I'm just telling you this is the logic that goes into it. You have to understand the people you're as you're seeing this. And so when you're talking about chemical and biological weapons, the value they have is that you can kill the people and keep the stuff. Okay, and so the idea that Assad, like I said last week, that Assad wouldn't use these things because he was close to winning, it's the exact opposite. The closer you are to winning, the more you just want to exterminate the people and keep your buildings, especially if it's your country. You're not even invading. It's bad when you're invading another country, but if you're trying to get invaders out of your country or you're trying to get forces out of your country, there you go. So super important. And so this idea, that that Alex Jones has this problem. He's freaking out all of a sudden, and a bunch of others, and it's groups on the left and everybody. I understand are upset about going in and actually, being involved in these things, but don't come up with a facetious argument for why not. Don't pretend there isn't a logic to what's going on here. You use a counter logic, right? Don't just pretend that's just nuts. That would never happen. Yes, it would. There's 7 billion people in the world. There's enough people to do almost any awful you can think of. So super easy. And thank you, Ginger, for the super chat. Greatly appreciate that. And a big hug. Hope you're doing good. And so Alex Jones, though, even though we know that this response it turned out to ultimately be garbage. It was a larger scale version of the one that we had last year. It hit sites where the Russians and the Iranians had already had enough time to move their stuff out. The idea that we destroyed their chemical weapons program through the bombing that went on was largely for show. All we did was make holes that were already there bigger. The chemical facility that we hit had already been hit by the Israelis weeks, if not months before, multiple times. One of the other reasons we don't talk about why we're in Syria is because of its proximity to Israel and our defense relationship with Israel. That being said, it's a quagmire. It's a mess. But the idea that all of a sudden Alex Jones is so upset because the president he's firing on Syria and he's just joined in, and the globalists. I mean, I've heard everybody from him to Lee Camp say that the president was anti-interventionist until the globalists and the military-industrial complex got a hold of him. First of all, that's crap, because he's all about being in these places if he goes and meets somebody who says, yeah, we need to dust them off. He just didn't understand while we were still in Iraq and Afghanistan. We were already in the process of moving out of those places. So it was easy to be on the bandwagon and just get out sooner. But he was also the guy who said, if we bomb terrorists, we need to kill their families too. So this idea that he's against escalation is violently false. Violently false. And that he needed the military-industrial complex to get him to want to be this involved in any war theater is an absurdity. Any man who says we need more black sites, we need to keep Gitmo open, and we need to bomb the wives and children, and there are no innocent civilians around anybody who's perceived to be a terrorist, that kind of person is an anti-interventionist. They just want to, they're more interested in assassination. And if you think that you can go into other countries and just assassinate people and not have it spiral out of control, you live in a cartoon fantasy land. And this idea that, suddenly, according to Jimmy Dore, Lee Camp, and Alex Jones, Trump didn't want to do this, but the globalists raided his attorney's office, and now all of a sudden he's all pro-war. It's infantile, especially if you hear the reports of what Trump is saying about these things, or watch his speeches or his tweets about these things. He's all in on attacking these countries because he thinks it makes him look tough. It's the same bait that a lot of presidents in the past have fallen for. It's absurd. So I don't necessarily buy that Alex Jones is upset about this thing. But the Sandy Hook blowback and the lawsuit that's coming out this week, I think, is incredibly important, because this guy has been pushing this idea that Sandy Hook was not just fake, that it was a false flag by anti-gun elements within the U.S. government to disarm the American public by ginning up, having a Gulf of Tonkin incident inside a preschool. That not only was that fake, because I'll tell you, anybody who has ever acted knows that you can manage an idea that's unmanageable if you just think it through a little bit. And you could say that this guy, whoever he was sent in there, but everybody who died and was affected by it was not. You could stop the conspiracy theory there, still make your point. But he didn't. He didn't just say that the killer was sent by MK Ultra or some sort of mind control within, HARP or some nonsense. He insisted that the parents of the children who were killed were actors, were faking it, were lying, that the deaths of their children didn't happen, and that they were pretending, that their sorrow was fake. And in saying this on his show, one need only look at the shooter in the Pizzagate conspiracy theory who went to a Comet ping pong with a gun to know that the parents at Sandy Hook have gotten death threats. You lose a toddler because a disturbed individual comes into a school and shoots your child dead. And Alex Jones is not satisfied saying that that person was a government agent sent by anti-gun groups within the U.S. government. No. He also has to say that you yourself, in the burial of your child, are lying. That your tears are not just false, but part of a government plan. That you are evil. That you are satanic. These are all words he uses about these people. And now he's being sued, and all of a sudden he tries to backtrack on this, just like he did with Chobani yogurt. This kind of stuff has got to come to an end. There's an element of responsibility to this, and walking it back now, after you're being sued, doesn't count. It's meaningless. It's meaningless. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Fake was Trump University, and finally Trump had to write a check for $25 million for that one. Yep.
Hell, you have 4 callers.
Oh, good. Did somebody win the tickets?
Yes, I sent it to you on the text.
Oh, I didn't see.
Mary Myers from Riverdale.
Okay, great.
Riverside. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Riverside, Illinois.
Okay, we'll just say Mary in Riverside. Yeah.
Yeah.
When we come back. Cool. Okay. Sorry, I have my phone on the other side of the room because sometimes it blings and vibrates because it's relatively new. So,
okay.
Yeah. Actors that know a loss or two. Yeah, well, Ginger, I think, makes a really good point about, this sort of Christian identity, especially when it comes to people like Alex Jones, is that's where the evangelical stripe kind of comes from, is, they're like car salesmen that drive a different model of car. They'll sell it to you, but they're lying. We do need to win over the hose in Senate in 2018, Brad. I agree. And you need the undercoating. That's right. Yeah, that was hysterical, the calling it. Yeah. Well, thanks for being here even part of the time, Drift Glass, and please, that obviously takes priority. So, what's coming up next on the podcast? You got to win over the hose. Mm-hmm.
25 seconds.
Okay. Coming back in just a couple seconds, guys.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
I want to say specifically, though, we lost Harry Anderson this week, and we also found out that Prince had fentanyl in his system, which came from, I guess, fake Vicodin that he had gotten. He didn't know he was taking fentanyl. He thought he was taking regular Vicodin, and that ultimately, they believe, is what killed him. There won't be charges currently in what happened to him, which is heartbreaking. As a lifelong Prince fan, I found the entire, just the occasion of his death and the circumstances around it as devastating. And I, he's one of those musicians. Here's the thing. If you like a musician, you like an artist, they've liked you, whatever, I want you to understand that there is no way that you can pay back financially what they've given to you in your life. There just is no way. That there's 99 cents for a song is the cheapest exchange for an extraordinary life experience you can ever have. And there are songs that man put out over the course of his life, and there's lots of artists that I feel this way about too, but specifically him, where there's no way I could have given back in a million lifetimes at that rate what I got from his music and his talent and all that. And so it's heartbreaking to find this out, and I think ultimately we here at the HSRPM and obviously on Superior Podcast with my buddy Frank, as huge Prince fans, there's got to be some movement about fentanyl in our society at some point. We got to recognize that a lot of the people that are dying of opioid and heroin overdoses right now aren't actually dying from the drugs they think they are taking. They're dying because they are mixed with fentanyl, and that has got to be shut down. That it is bad enough when an addict has to deal with being drawn to a drug that they know they are taking. It is entirely different for them to experience taking a drug and not realizing that there's something else in it that they will, people can say in the case of street drugs like heroin, that's the price you pay, but there's no reason morally why that should be the case. And we're going to talk more about this in the coming months, about this particular aspect of the opioid epidemic that I do not think is getting enough attention. And the same thing is true of lead poisoning and lead toxicity in our society. There's a direct link between lead toxicity at an early age and violent, impulsive behavior later in life. We, in many ways, sentence people to not understanding why they have the reactions or the addictive behaviors that they have when they've in fact been poisoned at a very young age, and parts of their brains have had holes blown in them by this by being exposed to lead. Areas in not just Flint, Michigan, but the entire neighborhoods in Cleveland have been shown by their violent crime statistics and their vacancy to be affected by lead at an impossible rate. The CDC is now saying that there is no acceptable level of lead in the human body for ingestion. And it is. I'm planning on doing a documentary about this over the summer. We will be shooting it, and hopefully I will have it done by the fall. But I think it is so incredibly important. And in our chat room, Amos is saying most of the fentanyl is coming from China, and this is, not surprising in a lot of ways. But the idea that it ultimately finds its way mixed into when people think they're taking even OxyContin, oxycodone, or heroin, and it turns out the dosage is 10 times what they think they're going to get because it has fentanyl in it. There's an aspect of where this arguably counts as murder in a lot of ways. You're killing people that are addicted or broken by their circumstances. It's just wrong. So anyways, I just want to say that part of it stands out as a very important part of this conversation that I don't think we have enough. And we find out that, people from, Prince to Philip Seymour Hoffman and others who had drugs they were taking either, that they believed they were taking legitimately or that they were getting illicitly have this fentanyl in it, and that's what ends up killing them. And I have one of the kids that was in my Boy Scout troop when I was a kid, his son died of it. One of my dad's friends, his son died of it, and my dad had to place the call to him. And it was related to the amount of fentanyl in these systems. And that I think is the one part of this that we're not discussing enough. That being said, I also want to bring up that, Harry Anderson died this week. And Harry was lovely and very funny. And Night Court was classic as a TV comedy. He was also a great comedy magician, fantastic magician. First needle through the arm gag I ever saw was done by him, and he ruined it for me with everybody else. He's so good. And then I also want to say, I see that, Billy. I will get to him in just a moment. And I want to say Harry Anderson had a line in his stand-up. He would do a magic trick that fell apart on purpose in his act. And he would say, like a well-oiled machine that came with directions that said, do not add oil. And I always loved that line. I think no one, I think there's no better descriptive for the Trump administration than that particular line. Like a well-oiled machine that came with directions that said, do not add oil. Let's grab some callers because we have 4 callers on the line. So who do we have, Lady B?
We have Mark from Indiana.
Excellent. Hey, Mark. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing today?
I'm good. Go ahead.
Well, great to talk to you again. James Comey's coming to the signing conference in Michigan City another month. I don't know if he's going to give a seminar. I don't know if he's going to take any questions. One question I'd like to ask him, how in the world was Rudy Giuliani briefed, along with FBI New York Chief Hellstrom, before the ongoing investigation of Hillary Clinton? Apparently he had plans inside the FBI disclosing an ongoing classified investigation. Rudy Giuliani should also be subject. He should be barred for taking information and making it public on Fox News that an October surprise was coming. Those should Chief FBI investigator Hellstrom be removed from the FBI, and both men should be indicted for interfering with an ongoing investigation.
Well, this is exactly if you want to pick out one thing that and I appreciate the call. It's a little I don't know why, but the phone call is clipping a little bit, so I'm going to let you go and I'll just answer off the air. But I appreciate your input, and I agree that everything you're saying about Rudy Giuliani is something that Fox News is saying about everyone involved on the Mueller team, everyone involved in the Southern District of New York, Comey himself, that the idea that they're leaking information, that they shouldn't say stuff. Meanwhile, Rudy Giuliani literally did the exact same thing that they're accusing Comey of doing, even though we know now that Comey's memos were his own property and that they were not classified secret or top secret, that they are... there are elements of them that could be redacted and released, and they ultimately were. And then we also know that some of the stuff that they redacted like whether or not they had a FISA warrant for Mike Flynn, for example. By the time they had been released, even to the press, we already knew that there had been a FISA warrant. That piece of information had already existed. So, needless to say, you're absolutely right. And it's super odd that Rudy Giuliani is going to be a subject, should be a subject of this particular investigation because he was involved as a campaign member in the dissemination of secret information. So I completely agree. Let's take a break and then we'll grab the other three callers on the other side of that if we could. And then, of course, after the show today, we'll do a post show. This is the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk, AM 820. Don't forget to plug that into your dial. And, of course, if you're traveling around the country, you can listen at WCPT820.com. And then, of course, you can always join us at halsparks.tv and join in the live stream of the show and join in the chat room and participate in the conversation there. It's always great to have you. We'll be back right after this.
Never make me stay. Dirty Diana, no. Dirty Diana, no. Ooh, now baby.
A post show. Yes, there will be a post show today. Because I don't have to run out the door. I've got an event tonight that I'm doing, which I'll tell you about when I come back from the break. People are lined up all along this funeral route to the Bush Library. Keep calling and no one answers. Lady B might be doing the phones at the same time, so just be aware. Yeah. What's Rocky Mountain Mike doing? What? I got the offer yesterday. I'm moving to Charlotte. Look at you. Right on. Offer to do what? I probably should ask that question first. The Dirty Diana song would be so different if the genders were switched. It wouldn't be the same song. Yeah, I agree. All the male versions of that are from the perspective of you leave him to come see me, and he doesn't know about me. So it's and you won't tell him. Like everything from there's everything from like Run to You by Bryan Adams is probably the closest in that zone. There's a bunch of Wasp songs are about literally, it seems the theme is like you're sneaking out. A lot of 80s metal is about that, like, sneaking away from your guy to come see me. Yeah.
30 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Flower by Liz Fair, yeah. I had a weird moment with Liz Fair a few years ago. I made a joke, and I think she thought I was hitting on her, and I was literally making a reference to one of her songs or something. Weird.
Excuse me. Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. It's now time for the happy ending.
Let's grab another caller, Lady B, if we can.
Yes, we have Steve from the Gold Coast.
Cool. Hey, Steve, welcome.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hal?
Yeah, I hear you. Can you hear me? Are you there? We hear you.
Somebody hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Can you let him know I hear him? And he can just go ahead and talk, Lady B?
Yes.
I'm assuming you guys
You go ahead and make your point.
Okay.
He can hear you.
I wanted to say that expand on what Hal had said in terms of Alex Jones and just how dangerous these people are. Various fields of social science test just how politically astute we are, how well informed we are. And it turns out over the last 4 decades, Americans have not become better informed, despite the fact that they have greater access to more information than ever before in recorded history.
Mm-hmm.
Because as it turns out, people have become become balkanized in terms of where they go for their information and what they rely on. So the people who listen to Alex Jones don't also listen to George Stephanopoulos. They don't tune into ABC or CNN. They don't read the New York Times. They have pretty much disregarded these outlets as being as part of some sort of cabal, international cabal, that Alex Jones advocates.
Mm-hmm.
So in effect, they have no counter to the nonsense that he offers them. And as a result of which, you have these people who live in this parallel universe that is completely detached from reality. And unfortunately, some of them do vote. And this is why we get some of the outcomes. I mean, these people are out there. And say what you will, you know, in an age when Walter Cronkite was on TV every night, he was at least honest. He wasn't offering you things that were out in Never Never Land.
Right.
And could support and had sources that had been verified and re-verified when it came to the stories that aired. And unfortunately today there is no such standard. For people who don't know it, what you read on the internet, what you hear on talk radio, none of that has been vetted. There is no requirement that it be true. So what you hear out there, though it seems to come from some sort of fake news outlet, it's not related to news at all. Sean Hannity wants you to think that he's doing news, which is why he sits behind a counter and looks like an anchor man. But he's not actually doing news. But he wants you to think that because that's what we associate with.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said. I know, Steve, I don't know if you can hear me, but there's a lot to be said about, and I appreciate the call, Steve, because I know we're having some sort of phone issue, but I'm glad you made that point. That Alex Jones, if you'll notice, does his show from a desk that looks like news. There's a big part of that. This is the mask that is worn. Because if he was really outside the world of media, there would be a variant version of just how he would deliver it. But what he does is he borrows the normalcy of how a normal television show is done. The background with the world in it and graphics on it. The graphics and the desk and every aspect of the show is done almost exactly like any nightly news program. And it borrows the image of that to give a false level of credibility to something that isn't there. If he was really outside the quote-unquote mainstream, he would also do his show in a way that doesn't borrow the mainstream's mask effectively. It's or maybe that's how he views it as being subversive, but I doubt he even puts that much into it. I think he just is doing a show because that's how you do a show, which is part of mainstream media anyways. And the number of followers that he has absolutely puts him in the world of mainstream as far as the stream of stuff that you can get and how easily accessible it is. There is no mainstream anymore. That's also something that's probably lost. Let's grab another caller, Lady B.
Yes, we have Matt from Chicago.
Cool. And if he can't hear me, let him know he can go ahead. Hey, Matt.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So here's my one question for you.
Sure.
Well, actually, it's more of a statement. Do you know that Donald Trump is actually a better person than Alex Jones? Because at least Donald Trump acknowledges the fact that Sandy Hook was not a false flag. That's how deranged this man is.
Mm-hmm.
He's worse than Donald Trump.
Right.
In all seriousness, anybody who can sit there and say that a mother holding her dead child in her arms when he's like, what, 4 or 5?
Yeah.
Is an actress, and that's not actually her son, and it's a squib, you're out of your mind, and as much as I hate Donald Trump with every fiber of my being, we should feel damn lucky that these people didn't elect Alex Jones to be put into office, because if that happened,
yeah. We're all done if that happens. That could never happen. I will.
I'd move out of country.
Yeah. No. I hear you. I do think that there's an element where Donald Trump on Alex's show said, "You'll be very proud. We'll do you proud," to Alex Jones when he was on his show, and continually spoke to him. Alex denies having spoken to him in the last 6 months. That's debatable. But I will say, and it wouldn't be surprising because Trump tends to cast people aside when he's done using them anyways. But there is an element where he said repeatedly, "I'll make you proud," or whatever. No adult human being who's running for president especially looks at a guy with a record of saying that every mass shooting is manufactured by the government just to take away guns. There are no situations in the last 10 years, at least, that I can find where Alex Jones has said in any way that the shooter or the victims themselves were legitimate. All of them, all of the shootings, from Pulse, from Columbine, like everything has been manufactured by some, cabal within the government. There is no room in Alex Jones's world for somebody to actually get a gun, get crazed up, and decide that they get to be the tyrant on their street corner. Because this BS about, we need a gun to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government has basically just created tyrannical dictators on street corners. People who stockpile weapons and decide one day that they are the king of the world and it's your turn to die. And believe me, Alex Jones and his ilk are all for this. There is nothing in their culture that would dissuade anyone from deciding at some point that walking out into the street and blowing people away isn't within their rights, because every one of these people, every single one of them, has been a law-abiding gun owner until the moment they shot someone, till they walked up to the school, till they entered, just having the open carry. Even these open carry maniacs that you always see, like, yeah, I should have the right to walk around with my semi-automatic military rifle around my neck anywhere I want to go. Bump stock should be legal. So I should be able to attach a bump stock, put it around my neck, walk straight up to the Capitol building, walk through the door, not have to go through a metal detector because that's a violation of my rights. And up until the moment they fire the first shot, they are a legal, law-abiding gun owner. And nobody seems to think that any of them that a police officer shouldn't be able to walk up to somebody with a rifle strapped around their neck for no particular reason and go, hey, man, where you going? Why you feel the need in a non-militarized zone? We haven't been invaded by anybody. Why are you carrying a 30, a semi-automatic rifle with a bump stock around your neck with a 30-shot clip in it? What time today are you going to have to shoot at 30 people? How many? At what point are you going to have to shoot 10 people 3 times? And why do you have 4 other clips in your bag? That part of it is it's a whole other story. We're actually running out of time. We're gonna have a post show after this, by the way. But I do want to. I do want to. We haven't done one of our happy endings in a while, and I think there are some stuff that I think are super important. That like locally in Chicago, there's a couple of things that have come up. One of them is a very tough piece of news, and some of you will recall that the Facebook live streaming of the disabled white kid that was beat up by 4 black people, and it made this big story. The right wing has turned it into a monstrosity. They've used it as they've weaponized the experiences to show their particular angle on things. They've created this illusion that there's a protected class of that hate speech and hate crimes only go one direction, blah, blah, blah. That turns out factually, as of this week, not true. The woman who streamed live the beating of the teenager with disabilities was sent to jail this week for 3 years. She got 3 years in prison just for streaming it. This is not the other people who actually are for co-defendants. They pled guilty to intimidation, aggravated battery. She got 3 years for a hate crime. So their story and narrative died. The other thing is, this is a piece of good news. Chicago police reported fewer officer-involved shootings and citizen complaints. Officer-involved shootings in the Chicagoland area plummeted by 29% last year. Officer complaints went down by 9%, and use of force incidents declined by 6%. There is a positive effect that is coming from attention to these details. And good cops out there are going to have to deal with fewer bad cops messing with them. Thanks to everybody for listening. Stick around for the post show if you want to join us. HalSparks.tv. Thank you so much, Lady B, and to all our callers. And congratulations to Mary in Riverdale for winning the tickets. Or Riverdale, isn't me. Riverside for winning the tickets to see Lewis Black. We'll have more to give away in a couple weeks. This is the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. We'll see you next week. Thank you, Lady B. Such a funny. Thank you, Lady B. I'm signing off. If I can find my.
Thank you, Lady B. Bye.
Okay. We'll let her go. Hey, everybody. Hey, chat room. How you doing? Is the sound okay today? I didn't hear any complaints, so I was hoping everything went pretty well. But, dink. See if we can get, there we go. Good stuff. Sounds great. Awesome. It was a little hissy in my ear, but I think that was coming from Chicago, so it was hard for me to really get a grip on that one, so I'm glad. Happy ending, Hal. An enzyme was accidentally created to destroy plastic. Yeah, EO. There's a couple of things like that. Let's hold on. Let me create a. Let's see. I got to create a post show separate. There we go. Let's see. Hold on. That's not what I want to do. Back. Create highlight. That's what I want to do. Post. I always forget how to the syntax of doing this. It's crazy. Okay, welcome to the Hal Sparks Radio Program Mega Worldwide Post Show. Thanks for joining us at halsparks.tv. You can like and subscribe and all that boilerplate. You can go to patreon.com/halsparks and support the show, and you can also do it via Super Chat whenever you want. I really appreciate it. This is all for the people who watch this later because the guys in the chat room and everybody already knows this. Every Saturday we're on from 9 to 11 Pacific time, 11 to 1 Chicago time on WCPT Radio, and you can watch the show there. And then afterwards, we have a little get-together for everybody who's in the chat room so we can continue to talk about some of these issues or talk about other stuff that we didn't get to cover over the course of the show. So thank you for joining in with me today. Let's see. Is this... Where is that? I got to try and find the right camera angle. All right. Get news stories and kind of keep track of you guys for that stuff. So... Yeah, that, here, whoops. Okay, good. All right. Yay, yes, Poach Show. You love this. I love this part, says Julie. I'm very glad. How was the museum last week? It was, you know, it was funny. We were going to go see King Tut down here. It was me and Camden and Frank and his son Frankie and my mom, and we started heading down there, and there was literally a line down, like, a mile long just to get into the parking lot. It was the actual display was sold out. So we turned tail and went to the La Brea Tar Pits with a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old and had a great old time. So it was actually really good. Let's see. And I'm going to scroll back through and look at some of the chat stuff that you guys were talking about, just so I don't miss anything in that regard. Hi from San Diego, Susie. Well, hi. Hello. Let's see. Yeah, so EO brought up the fact that there was this enzyme created that eats plastic, which is fantastic, unless it gets out of control, and then everything we have that's made out of plastic gets destroyed. That'd be adventurous. The real happy ending, and you know, and not that one isn't real, is the. Let me see if I can find the actual. Let's see, news. There's a protein that they discovered that if they manage it, they can literally turn off and reverse the damage. Let's see. Yeah, protein. I gotta find it. There was a yeah, here it is. It's ApoE4. This particular scientists say they've identified the primary risk factor for Alzheimer's disease and even have a way to correct it. This came out just last, like, a couple weeks ago. They have a gene variant called ApoE4, which is known to be a risk factor for Alzheimer's. It causes some of the toxins of Alzheimer's disease, such as beta amyloid. The team from the Gladstone Institute in San Francisco say they have also created a way to correct its damaging gene in humans. All humans inherit the ApoE gene, which comes in 3 forms called alleles, ApoE2, ApoE3, ApoE4. And the ApoE4 allele increases the risk of Alzheimer's disease. 3 is neutral, 2 reduces the risk. The team experimenting on cultured human cells used gene editing techniques to change the damaging E4 to the neutral A3, which many researchers in the past have experimented on mice. The lead researcher said the mouse models don't accurately mimic human disease. However, by using stem cells, the team was able to move to more accurately see the probable results of reducing ApoE4 genes in human brain cells, which they say will remove a major risk for people developing this devastating disease. They found that rather than changing the gene, they were also able to use a certain class of experimental drugs to modify the protein associated with ApoE4 in order to reduce its harmful effects. They've one of the other teams working on it has actually reversed the damage. You know, this it's a huge deal, and you know, it's great that stuff continues, you know, working as a you know, as an element within these. So there you go, big fan of that. And right, where we go, let's see, and so Rocky Mountain. Oh, and let's see how I met some WCPT folks at the DuPage Democrats event I covered, where Mayor Carmen Yulin Cruz was the keynote speaker, and they couldn't stop singing your praises. Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Well, we do pretty good for our little show being on once a week. 8 plastic in that jet fighter. Let's see. Yeah. Tar pits are always a good second thing to do mid-Wilshire. I feel like I know Aisling Farrell personally now. The girl who's in charge of Project 29 at the pits. They discovered Zed the mammoth and all these extra pieces and a bunch of dire wolf skulls and skeletons and all that when they were they're adding a parking garage to the museum next door. They're drilling down and they hit something huge, and it turned out to be a full mammoth skeleton, and the skull they call Zed, you know, because Zed's dead, baby. You know, a little bit of Pulp Fiction history there. They've been working on that. You can go down there, and you can actually see the skull. They've been cleaning it, and it still seeps oil today. So output okay. Adjust the data rate due to low internet bandwidth. Please reduce frame rate. But however, it's fine. I think we're okay. CRISPR could end all of us if doomsday cults learn how to use it. That's clearly true, because CRISPR, you can, for those of you who know, that's a gene splicer, and that can be made. You can, let's see. You just go to DIY CRISPR kits. Learn, like, literally, you can. Yeah, here it is. You can still pre-order kits. Yeah, do it yourself. Bacterial CRISPR kit. It's nothing. Like, it's nothing. That's a oh, it's buffering now. Low bit rate now. All right, sorry. Somebody must have jumped on the internet right after me. Oh yeah, I see it. Hopefully it'll catch back up. Give it a second. Reload your page, maybe. Let's see if that does it. Fingers crossed. Maybe it does. We'll see. I think a lot of... Okay. All right. It's not half bad. YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain... Okay. Output, destination, major performance issues, status information. Drop to 15... Oh, now it's fine. Yeah, somebody in my, somebody in my building probably just tried to speed download something. It's okay. I like my chicken CRISPR. No, you don't. I guarantee you don't. Yeah, you're absolutely right. CRISPR is a danger to the world. Like, and again, all of these things you can assume that everybody already has them. You know, talking about with the Trump information with Cohen and this crowd, it's like there's no way they don't all of them don't already have this. You know, this woman spotted this thing, and I tweeted it out, but I'm like, this idea that Mueller and them haven't figured this out because but somebody who just glanced at it on Twitter could figure it out just by looking at it for a second is, you know, is absurd. Yeah, the yeah, I don't understand how Trump keeps saying he's a billionaire. Like, that's got to come crashing down at some point. It's just like, there's so many poor rich people, it's hilarious. They live on credit. Shit. Rice Crisper treats. Calm down, Rocky Mountain Mike. CRISPR has the ability to make a Gene Wilder. Chicken CRISPR coming soon to a Chick-fil-A. Yeah. No, because that would involve the evolution of cells and the modification of them. That's playing God. I don't think they would allow doing that unless they could put their weird little Christian fortune cookie in there. Hal Sparks, the only human that intimidates a computer. This is true. Kurt, for Congress 2018 says to clean our planet up, I propose we ban disposable plastics and then gather up all the world's trash and send it to the sun to be incinerated. Yeah, lifting it off the earth is the problem. There's a couple of options that have come up lately, and let me see if I don't think. Yeah, let me see if it allows screen source, custom. Yeah, show capture area. Let's just do it this way. Yeah. There it is. Okay. So I'll have to, that's a good idea. I'll put it down here. Yeah. Put it down. Okay. The plastic road replacement. There's a company in Sweden. I think it's Sweden. Might be Norway. I always get those areas mixed up a little bit. But what they're doing is plastic roads. There it is. Clean Technica. Yeah, this is the version of it in Scotland. But nope, that's not, yeah. Is that it? Yeah, that's the other one. Oh, crapola. Yeah, there it is. Let's put this over here. Yeah, that'll work. Oops, I might have crashed my own software by doing this. Thing is, until it wakes up, I'll give it a moment to think about it and consider its crimes. Here's they go. Yeah, here we go. Let's try and move this around. Oh, it's green screening itself. That's hilarious. But if you see on here, it says, yeah, you can't read it. I don't know why that doesn't work. It's so very weird. But it says Scottish engineer Toby McCartney had an epiphany one day when his daughter's teacher asked what grows in the ocean, and she yelled plastics. McCartney had spent his time in India and seen how roads in that country were repaired by putting waste plastic into potholes and burning it. He took the idea and invented the plastic road. Together with friends Nick Burnett and Gordon Reed, he started a new company called McRuber, which is quite Scottish. which uses 100% recycled plastic as a substitute for the bitumen normally used to pave roads. Ordinarily, asphalt roads are about 90% rock, sand, and limestone mixed with about 10% bitumen. McRuber takes waste plastic, farm waste, and commercial waste and turns it into pellets called MR6. These pellets replace most of the bitumen where the new plasticide asphalt is made. McCartney says the process results in plastic road that's 60% stronger and lasts up to 10 times longer than normal asphalt road. So there you go. And which brings me to the idea that the La Brea tar pits, and I'm just going to keep talking like this because I feel like it, but the La Brea tar pits are actually not tar pits at all. Tar is man-made, right? Tar is when you take asphalt and you refine it. You take asphalt and you turn it into tar, right? So, and I am Scottish, so I'm allowed to say this. I mean, it's the most dominant aspect. My 23andMe and my Ancestry.com, the prevalent amount of DNA is Scotch-Irish, heavily weighted in the Scotch area because of where the people came from. So there we go. We need more power, absolutely. But the La Brea tar pits are actually asphalt pits, right? They're not tar pits at all. And so there you go. So, and we make roads out of asphalt, but actually we take the asphalt and we change it. We change it into tar, right? Before it doesn't stay asphalt. We call it asphalt, but it's because we use it as a primary element, right? Which DNA kit should one buy? Here's the interesting thing. When I did the 23andMe first, and it was kind of vague, but it had some decent stuff in it. And the Ancestry one seemed to have more detail in it, but I don't know if I trust it. Here's two big problems. One is they have almost zero Native American, depending on tribal groups. They have almost zero Native American DNA mixed into either one of them. They've got some heavily Lakota and heavily I think Iroquois or something like that. But the idea that you're Native American or you're not Native American is like saying you're Asian, and it makes a big difference whether you're Japanese or or you're from Korean or you're Chinese, you're Vietnamese. They're not just Asian in general, right? In that regard. So saying you're Native American, there's a big difference between the Comanche and the Lakota and the Iroquois and the Navajo. These different people, right? Ancestry does have Native Americans, just the samples are really small. That's right. Can't hide the McGee. That's true. So, how are you playing golf? I don't play, and they played it golf. They call it golf. They have 58 as me. That's funny. I feel so close to the 8 now. Are you playing golf? Referring to Robin Williams' golf sketch. That's good. And we've lost Hal, right? Yes, you have. You've scattered off in the distance. But yeah, so the just to clarify, the early 23andMe, they just didn't have a lot of. Each of these will get better over time because they're getting a broader sample of human beings. Like they're just missing entire swaths of genetic code over the world because they just don't gather it. I actually did get a story idea from the show today. Well, there you go. Thanks. You're welcome. I'm glad to contribute. There you go. Yeah. I'll die if he does the horse galloping. So each one of them is getting more. They're broadening their sample source, and the more people that do it, the more that's in there. And I guarantee if somebody gets their genetic test done today, that if they do it again in 5 years, it will be very different. It'll have a lot more information and probably be cut a lot finer. So where you'll see these giant pieces of the pie, it'll get much more narrow. Or within it, they'll say, yeah, Scotch, Irish, but you'll have gradations of what's in there to the point where they can, mixed with your family tree, can, line it all out. So yeah, I just realized the stream I'm watching is 8 minutes behind. Yeah, there's a bit of a delay. Sorry. I don't think I could write that book without bursting entirely into flames. Ancestry has a $59 special right now, so I was wondering. Yeah, it's cool. You can do it kind of relatively anonymously, too. You know, I mean, they technically know who paid for it and all that kind of stuff. But if you bought it for yourself and you didn't really put any information, you just paid for it with, like, if you got, for example, you could do it anonymously if you put in a fake name and you got a gift card and you paid for it online that way. So anybody who has a worry about some sort of, like, they're gathering your info, there's a way to hide it if you care. 23andMe constantly rechecks my DNA sample, but I'm part of their lupus research. Yeah, you can be involved in a lot of those parts. You can opt in to help broaden stuff. I want to see Hal in a kilt. I've got a kilt. I've got a couple of them, actually. I'll have you know. My wife and I have been trying. You just go to their website. Yeah, exactly. It's pretty simple. They send you a kit. You spit in it. You send it back. A little while later, maybe about 6 weeks later, they send you. I received my dad's DNA results on my birthday last year. You never saw it. How did you? Oh, because he passed. Right. I was about to say, how did you hide it from him? I do have a bagpipe. I can't practice it here. I got it out the other day, and I just started tuning it up, and I was like, it was so goddamn loud. I'm like, I'm going to get evicted. There's a lot of white supremacists that find out they have sub-Saharan African DNA, and it's not entirely not due to both South African genetics and also the American slave trade and the race mingling that happened, before, that was legal, in the United States. So it's not surprising at all. It's interesting that they show this ad with this woman. I call it the Wakanda ad because it's this very light-skinned black lady with freckles, and she's talking about her, the women who ran the tribe, and that's where I get my strength from. And you're like, yeah, you don't just get your traits from your gender throughout your history. That's weird. And that tribe doesn't exist anymore. They got wiped out. So I don't know why you'd want. It's super odd that it seems very manipulative. And if you look at her breakdown, she's like 14% sub-Saharan African. Like, I think that's the same amount I have. And she's talking about that's where she gets her strength from, and you're a proud woman and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, that's really cool. But you do realize you get genetics from your dad and your mom and their parents and their parents. There's no point where you just get to pick, like, yeah, I'm strong because I had strong men in my background. But all the strong women who, are the reason I'm alive don't really play into me. That's just messed up. And then the fact that she's mostly English and Irish is funny. Like, she's way more, like, you could put William Wallace up there, and she's just as responsible for her strength in that regard. I'm like, what? Maybe your parents just raised you right. How about them? I don't know what kind of afraid to find out you're part Romulan. You're right, these readings count the markers for different subsets. Yeah. You've seen the movie Gattaca, a great movie about DNA from '97. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's definitely going to be part of that. It's still got the paranoia that a lot of people have about, oh my God, they're going to, find out you've got an illness, and therefore, they'll make sure that you have, they can control you based on your genetic limitations. Like, no, they're just going to fix a bunch of it. And the realistic movie would be somewhere between that and Elysium, where there will be at some point genetic modifications for almost anything. Where you'll just have to pay for it, right? And then there'll be black market mods, and then those black market mods, like CRISPR, will be available to next to everybody, and there will be a space race level affect that's coming. Understand that. I mean, think about that for a minute. We could talk about CRISPR all we want to, Oh, man, hold on. I got to create a whole new post-show highlight. Hold on. Grabbing the post-show highlight right now because we had to reload the page. So I guess you had to be here or watch the full show for the rest of the top end of this, whatever. But we really started talking where this went was we're talking about Ancestry DNA and 23andMe. I've done both. I find them both very revealing. I think there is something to them that's very fascinating. I think it's weird when they do the ads about, you were my strength, you were my, I know this is where I get my whatever from. You're like, nah, maybe you get it from your current society and your parents. You can't blame unless we're just going to drive ourselves as instinctual animals. I think this is friggin' goofy. I have a friend who identifies as black. She did her DNA and results were majority Norwegian. She's 6 foot tall, blonde with blue eyes. Huh? I mean, is she other-kinning? What's happening? I don't know. Did we learn nothing from the Rachel Dolezal endeavor? Like, I don't get it. Like, I'm not a big fan of the whole concept of cultural appropriation. I think that's America is one giant cultural appropriation. Like we're here as a melting pot on purpose. We've said this before, but I think the roots of our strength is diversity, but the fruits is not. We're a gelling of society that picks from a lot of different cultures and uses the best of all of them and celebrates all of them. And you can't just celebrating diversity in violently enforced camps is just garbage. Where is it, Ginger? I just saw that you said that news alert. Is it an active shooter right now? America's a melting Jiffy Pop. Yeah, I don't. I like the transracial thing. I find is super weird. Ultimately, in the world of free speech or whatever, like I just find that to be like you can say and do anything you want or whatever, but but I'm not going to say that the blowback you get over it is not going to be racially is racism or something. I think you're being weird, and society will treat you as weird. Thank you, RMM. Good luck with your move. I'm not. It's that one's. I mean, that's like people saying they're half goat. I don't know, like the otherkin thing that shows up on Tumblr and that kind of stuff. Like I even think, and we've talked about this before, but in the in the gender queer world, there is a very awkward part of that seems to deny trans people their identity. This idea that that gender is a complete construct. You can change it at any time. It is only enforced by society, and that you are labeled this when you're young. It seems to say that people who are trans who recognize within themselves natural tendencies towards what is the opposite of their birth sex physically. It's almost the same argument that evangelical Christians make, like, just change your mind, dude. Like that seems really dismissive of trans people. Like, it seems like most of the gender queer and gender fluid stuff comes from the B in LGBT, that they're finally having their day in court, that the bisexual world is whose influx and moves around in that clearly that seems to be where the seed of this particular argument, the genderqueer world, seems to flow from the bisexual aspect. Otherwise, it would be, you know, asexual in that regard, I suppose. I mean, it's obviously a conversation that needs to happen there. But this idea that somehow that gender is something that's laid on you by society, there's nothing biologically determinative in sex that makes gender come from you, that the amount of estrogen or testosterone has no play in your personality or your tendencies. And Carrie, I would, you know, you're probably our neighborhood expert on this kind of thing. That I would, you know, I'd be curious to hear what your take is on it. Let's see. I'm certain that trans people do, in fact, embody those changes physically long before they decide to have any surgery. Genes are mutating all the time. I think that's entirely possible. I wouldn't rule that out. But I'm always kind of conflicted when, you know, when discussing this or seeing it discussed about how to, you know, process it in that regard and, you know, in its consideration. You would think LGBT peeps would be more woke, but alas, I don't know. I don't know why. They're groups of people like anybody else. There is, you know, one of the things that when you're granting equality to someone, that you have to recognize is their propensity towards evil or being mistaken, because that is part of being of equal treatment. You know, it's I'll do a special California version for Carl and Ginger and that crowd on the West Coast. We'll do something, you know, we'll do a live, maybe at Flappers. I'll do the show live there sometime soon. It's earlier in the morning here, obviously. Transgender has been around from the beginning. Sort of. There's always been, it was transsexual initially because it was, you know, we didn't view gender as separate from sex in the descriptive as it was. You know, we viewed, you know, it a matter of sexual nature, and that it was divergent from the physical expression of your genitals, essentially, or your internal organs, because it's not all about our as well. You know, it's not just your externalized organs, you know, your sex organs, but it's your internalized ones as well. And it really does bring about this interesting thing about identifying someone based on, you know, the pronoun argument is very interesting when you start playing on, like, okay, you're bringing a friend of yours who's been in a car accident and you refuse to refer to them by a gendered pronoun, and it will affect, once they cut into them, what they're going to find when they need to do surgery. Is there a uterus that's going to be present there, or is there not? And that will affect how this person is treated in that moment. So in that moment, do you call them he or she, their birth gender allocated pronoun, to save their own life, or do you stubbornly insist that it must be said in spite of it limiting their care in that moment? I mean, this is you know, it's a genuine question, and it is meant to save people from harm in those regards. You know, I'm always curious about how that plays out, because there have to be practical, real world, you know, elements to this. So we shall see. I mean, that's this. When these things come up, I consider these very strongly, and it's funny because obviously when we do this Monday, we're doing a Queer as Folk reunion for Entertainment Weekly. And some of the things that have come up, tweeted you, since I can't link stuff directly. Oh, well, thanks, Act. You know, they often talk about, like, you know, if should you know, Queer as Folk had more trans people on it, should it have had, but and I'm like, that's like saying you know, if I had a chance to go do 5th grade over again, I would rather be the height I am now. Growth is growth. And I'm glad we've grown to the point where we, you know, to some degree, we feel like, you know, the gay marriage battle has been won. There are other great changes that have happened for that, and we can continue to make advances and stuff. But this idea that that you regret positive stuff you did in the past because it wasn't positive enough at the time is just bizarre to me. Like and it's not like anybody was denied or turned on or QAF denigrated trans people at the time, or we had drag queen characters and other characters that were involved, but it wasn't like they went, oh yeah, we don't talk about that, that's not our problem. It was not even that. They were so busy, there was never enough time just to deal with the storylines of that the writers and creators of the show had been wanting to tell for decades on the first show that they'd ever told. They were busy telling their stories, and they weren't trans. They were telling their story as gay men and women in their relationship stuff. So I agree. We need a new Hal Fest. I think it's a great idea. It might be another Sparks Nation meeting at some point. Don't get complacent about gay marriage. I suspect that's one reason thugs are trying hard to stack the SCOTUS. I agree, but I do think it's too late. How is this Monday reunion only for print? Monday reunion. Yes, it is. Gay culture is different than trans identity. I agree. I don't think they're related in a lot of ways. As a matter of fact, you can argue that the majority of quote-unquote trans people are technically, once they transition, heterosexual in that regard, in theory. But that, again, not all of them. But they certainly are a good portion of them. So once you're trans and you've transitioned and you're now a trans man and you have a female partner, that effectively makes you straight, right? I mean, technically. And how do you address that? It's an important thing because because if you don't, you're denying their sexuality. Hal, I did not get to see it live, but your broadcast about Hannity was great. We need an Amber Alert when you feel the need for speed. Oh, thanks. Yeah. I didn't send out a notification because, quite frankly, I don't know how to do that on, sure, it's fairly simple on YouTube, but I just didn't do it. I was I had to jump on because that was hilarious. Yeah, the 5 Park 5 Nation. That's right. So, hey, Carrie, you're back. Just in time for you to miss everything we talked about in regard to trans identity politics. That's hilarious. That Hannity cast was hysterical. Hal, thank you, Carl. That was really fun. I just had to jump on it. I couldn't tweet fast enough. It was so crazy. Someone who's transgender can also be gay, lesbian. Oh, of course they can. I'm just referring specifically to the ones that transition and are effectively heterosexual after that point. Does their sexual identity no longer deserve protecting? Yes, if you're a trans man and date women, you are heterosexual. Right. I was basically talking about the fact that on the one hand, I feel like the LGBT, conversation that we're having, even adding the Q and on, is that the gender. A lot of times, I find the genderqueer argument negates trans people's identity using some of the same logic that evangelical Christians do, which is it's all in your head. Why don't you just choose differently? The same thing is true in many ways about how some genderqueer or gender fluid people address innate sexuality. That they go, if you're, if you're heterosexual or you're gay or lesbian and you wouldn't date a trans person, that effectively makes you bigoted and phobic. Chinese drummers outside my window. It's a legitimate question. I'm not denigrating this. I think it's actually a much more fluid experience in conversation than we can even process. That's what I mean. It's some heavy lifting. I would say that we're all on a sexual orientation, gender identity spectrum, and everyone's identity should be respected. I agree, but what I'm saying is, Carrie, is that I don't think that the fluidity of the gender orientation and spectrum argument that you often hear, that it's a social construct, is almost identical to the neo-Christian idea that you're only gay in your head. And they seem to make that fairly ferociously, from what I've seen online and in a lot of lectures that I've watched that people do on gender studies at school, that it is completely a fabrication of society. is there about to be an execution outside? Yeah, it's kind of what it sounds like. It's actually, I don't know if I'll be able to see it. Yeah, so I don't know if I'll be able to show you outside the window. Let's see if I can grab this, and I'll switch cameras real quick. Hold on. This is fun. You get this different camera. There we go. So here they are. There's the temple. So they bless the temple regularly. And I will go over there later on, and I will burn some incense and say some omidofos. And yeah, but I mean, I genuinely, this is a conversation I like having, because I think it's important, you know. Hang on. My close friend is queer and goes by them, they. I can't say boyfriend or girlfriend. I just say Jamie, which I think is cool. It's weird to my grandma that I can't, my GMA, that I can't say boyfriend. Check out Asia Kate Dillon from Billions. They're non-binary. Yeah, I find the non-binary arguments, once you get into the deep reads of it, nullifies gay and lesbian identity in an attempt to fight what they call heteronormative behavior or societal heteronormativity, which is just averaging, not normative. There's two versions of normal: normal, not weird, and normal, average. And when you know, there's a lot of use of the heteronormative concept as meaning it's enforcing a you're not allowed to be weird, as opposed to no, just by volume there are more heterosexual people. And I don't mean just identifying, because I don't think everything is just how you identify yourself. I do think you have an innate thing. We need to embrace them, they, as a pronoun more. I disagree, Carrie, because it's we often use it as a pluralizer, and it can be used in the abstract occasionally, but it doesn't serve as as a genuine one. And I think people can be fluid in whether they're he or she, but if they're presenting, pronouns are not respectful. Pronouns are your name is respectful. Pronouns are general. And if you're generalizing, it's not an act of respect. Somebody calls me he doesn't respect me. It's the best descriptor to describe me to a group of people. He, him, over there. That's what he looks like. Chinese, if we have it, and people seem to hate that idea. In Chinese, they have he, she, or it is actually the same word. It's ta, ta, but it's the character's different, so you know whether they're male, female, or it's an item. But the word itself, verbally, is one thing. I write stories for the Windy City Times, and we always ask what a person's pronoun is. I doubt that. I think you ask transgender or genderqueer people that, but I don't think you ask straight people that. I think you assume that. I think most people do. There's a lot of assumptions around, and that's, if anything, reinforces heteronormativeness in not weird version as opposed to the averaging version. It's that guy. There was also it's a good example of when the bathroom bill came up. There was a there was a bunch of stuff about somebody's going to get molested in a bathroom, and then this story came up of this transgender person, male identifying technically as female, who sexually assaulted a child under their care in a bathroom. And they went, aha, bathroom. It wasn't a public bathroom, though. It was a private bathroom in a house. But they used that as they tried to weaponize that for a while. It fell apart, of course, when everybody found out it was a bathroom in a house. It had nothing to do with it. But the trans person in that situation used the idea was that you can't use they pronouns for that because that person did not assault that child with their penis. It wasn't there collectively. It was her genitals that she assaulted the girl with. Is the idea. And so the pluralization in terms of for the conversation slows the roll in that conversation. They and them technically makes it sound like a group activity when it's only a single person. It doesn't mean we can't come up with something. I'm just saying that it doesn't always work, and it's not an automatic fix for it. And again, there's this weird thing about that he or she in and of itself is violative, as if he or she is in and of itself a slight or a slam, if it's simply that when in reality it's like saying, oh, your hair's kind of, you're actually a redhead. Your hair has kind of a red glow to it. I would have said you were a brunette from a distance, but now that I'm up close to you, I can see that your hair is actually a dark red color. It's that kind of a descriptor. That's what he's and she's are. I think we've taken too much. It's interesting that we've moved past the idea of where a label is so important to your identity that it supersedes your individuality to a point where people feel disrespected, by a non-respectful word. I mean, this is a conversation worth having. I'm not defining this. I'm just saying there are holes in the argument across the board that seem, important to have. And I don't know that they're had. There you go. These are questions that I have. In my state, the guy who introduced the bathroom bill to VA legislature was defeated by back in November by a wonderful trans woman. I completely agree. And who identifies as female, uses she pronouns, and is a she. By the genderqueer argument, though, she is a victim of patriarchy, and her identity is a fix. Her presenting as a woman is a creation of society, not her own self. And it just seems like the genderqueer argument is almost identical to the evangelical Christian argument, which is it's all in your head, and why don't you just change your mind? I mean, maybe that's just horseshoe theory, but it's an interesting, and I find this because I find that I find that it only bothers me is because I feel like it undermines trans people's identity. My friend's kid transitioned, and she changed the gender. She refers to him or her by the new pronoun. Mm-hmm. If you hate gender-neutral bathrooms so much, how come you got one at your house? It's an excellent point, but you don't let the public use the bathroom. You let guests use the bathroom, and there's a difference, is the argument. Again, one of these things is like... I live with the kind of brain where I have a counter argument to everything, and so I have to manage everything based on the principles of what I actually want to accomplish, as opposed to how could you even say? Who would even think? Like, well, these people would think, and this is how you could say, is obviously the answer. If you need it done quickly, yes, I told Hal I was going to finish the script before he comes back from China, so my free time is plenty right now. Yeah. By denying people their pronoun choice, you are negating them as a person. I disagree because no one ever asks me what pronoun they always assume, and they are welcome to assume that since I present as a male, my pronouns are he or him. They never ask, but I never feel negated as a human being. My pronouns aren't indicative of my worth as a human being. I would never give anyone that power. That being said, I use people's preferred pronouns, but not because without doing it, I'm negating the pronoun because I do it because it's an act of respect. It's a plus in behavior, not a this isn't zero sum, is what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense? Here's a line from the article I wrote about Asia. Both Dylan and the character Dylan's preferred pronoun are playing are gender non-binary identifying. Both Dylan and the character they are playing are gender non-binary identifying. Okay, what does gender non-binary identifying means? Because, when asked about their experience on set, Dylan said that everyone is kind, funny, charming, and real. Yeah, it still sounds like when asked about their experience on set, Dylan said that everyone is kind, funny, charming. It sounds like that they you're referring to is the people Dylan said is the everyone, not Dylan. In that sentence, that's what it reads like. When asked about their experience on set, Dylan said that everyone is kind, funny, charming, and real. It sounds like Dylan doesn't understand what you're asking and is describing what everyone's experience is on set. The people that are kind, funny, charming, and real. I use he, him, his, and only my mother allows. Only my mother I allow to use female pronouns. Everyone else refers to me on male pronouns, and we've got a problem. Cool. When people say it's all in your head, well, of course it is. That's where we live, but that doesn't mean we can change it. Interesting. You know, I'm just saying we run into the limitation only because we learned this way in the past. Young people get it. Yeah, but there's as much confusion in the community about a lot of this stuff and a lot of infighting caused by it. And this goes nowhere towards how you would degender any of the other Latin-based languages. English is easy to do. Genderqueer, also termed non-binary, is a catch-all category for gender identities that are not exclusively masculine or feminine, identities which are outside the gender binary or cis-normativity. No, I understand that. I'm just saying that the notion of genderqueer is an identity. Meaning you take gender and you mess with it outside the norms of expectations around gender. So you could be a genderqueer male or a genderqueer female as well. You could be genderqueer, what would used to be called androgynous, like what David Bowie would present as, would be considered genderqueer in that regard. It's another, it makes sense to me. That's how I approach it. I don't know which thing... what's with the Apache war drum beats? It's actually the Chinese temple outside my window. I'm going to talk about drawing lines, yeah. And another sentence I wrote, acting has been a part of Dylan's life since they were a kid growing up in Ithaca, New York. Right, they who? Their whole family are actors? And another line, Dylan noted that they can point to 3 moments that stand out in their early life that awaken the performer in them. It still sounds like Dylan was talking about other people because they is a plural. I mean, I understand what you're trying to do, but it reads like, if you're especially taken out of context, probably in the entire context of the entire article where you're referencing the fact that they use they, it sets you up for this idea. But anytime you would try to lift a piece out of this, you would do this. Yeah. Funny how we need to classify each other. Humans do love the labels, can't judge others without labeling them, I guess. Yeah, that's part of what I'm talking about, Can't Stop Lying, is that we talk about genderqueer especially is about being an extraordinary non-normative human being, as if normal is bad, but let's just start from scratch that you're a standout. You're an outlier, as Malcolm Gladwell would say. And then we insist that outlier have a very defined label. Even if that very defined label is, I don't label based on this. I am counter to this. This is the Satan as proof of the existence of God concept. But at the end of the day, if we allow each person to label themselves, and we have to allow that people won't know what those labels are sometimes until we tell them. Yeah, and then are you ever going to change that label? If you're genderqueer, I mean, a lot of people borrow he or she during certain times, or they use they fluidly with other stuff, or they tell you my label today is I also go by, and you're like, okay, well then at what point, which one am I going to get sued over? That's part of the backlash that's happened around it. It's important. It's, you know, I'm not saying any of this is wrong. I'm saying it's still being hashed out. We are in a growth period right now. This is not settled science. And it's definitely not settled social science. There are countless articles that talk about they, them as a singular pronoun. Yeah, but there are a factor of 10,000 more, and most human interactions where they and them are pluralizers, and still are. I'm sure that, Carrie, you yourself use they and them as a pluralizer the rest of the time. And so that mix makes it weird. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying this is the limitation of that particular pronoun replacement. If we're beat up on people for not knowing or not, let's see. That's sort of the idea of like the idea that someone not using your pronoun is negating your intelligence. I think there are people for sure that insist in very specifically not calling a trans woman she or her, and not calling a trans man he or him, and they do it specifically to hurt that person, and I believe that is wrong. But I also think that the people who use the flexibility of the adaptive phase that we are in as human beings, and when they weaponize it, they do more damage to those people. Like saying Asian versus Oriental when referring to people. Yeah, but that took a transition, and it's still a long time takes that transition. And at no point did we make it illegal to refer to someone as Oriental during the transition to Asian. And over the course of about 15 years, people slowly learned. Older people still refer to people as Oriental, but we don't sue them, and they don't lose their job over it. I think it's a great example of how people do adapt over time. And in 25 years, the labels we have now will be archaic. Yes, I agree. There's a big part of that. Our services over at the Chinese Temple, I was actually enjoying it. Yes, they were. They are that part of it, anyways. They'll go inside and they'll pray for a bit too. Yes, and my Asian friends get pissed, as they should. But again, they also recognize the difference between old people saying it and young people saying it. Nobody even uses the phrase anymore. But the transition was 20 years. I mean, there's movies where Asian people are referring to themselves as Oriental because that was they weren't bothered by it. I get that, Hal, but why are you fighting this so much? Because this is the angle I see the amount of attacks coming, and I don't think it's worked out. And I think working it out is a healthy thing. I don't mind it in a generalized sense, but they them specifically. Like, I don't even mind. I think Z and Zer actually makes more sense because it is an externalizer. It is a new word in that regard. Technically speaking, but when you use the pluralizer, it falls apart. For a lot of people, and it mucks up the yeah. It's like if you go, can't call people Oriental anymore, instead of coming up with making Asian the proper form, which is good, we just said just refer to them as human. And you're like, you know what I mean? It's a pluralizer. Just call them humans. You're like, well, yeah, but humans, what do you mean? Humans from China? Humans from the Asian Peninsula? Or whatever? That kind of thing. I'm saying. I got blasted at a TV station I used to work at for saying Oriental instead of Asian. I explained that it's what I'd heard used by my mom all my life. I never knew Oriental was a slur. It wasn't. It was the descriptor. It wasn't a slur. Until there was a better proper form, and people knew what that proper form is, and then you don't say colored anymore. I never actually said it, but they say it in South Africa, and it's actually a term for mixed race people. Humans from space, right? But again, my biggest problem, Carrie, for the record, is not with they, them as a pronoun. I just think it's limited. I use Latinx now when I write about the community for the Windy City Times. I see that used as a way of where Latino wouldn't be the dominant over Latina, for example. But when you're referring to someone individually, you can refer to them as a Latino man or a Latina woman, I suppose, because in their actual language, that's how it would work out. Maybe. Would there be people who would be offended because you won't refer to them as a Latina or a Latin man, whatever? I'm sure they exist. Does their right to does their getting offended have to take a backseat? It's gender neutral. Yes, I understand that. The plural is hard for me in referring to someone as a singular. Yeah, I think that there is a hang-up across it. Is it wrong to call Trump a cracker? I think it's insulting to crackers, Amos, honestly. I think it's just, there's a lot of crackers out there that would feel like that's, first of all, he's an elite New York faux billionaire. Hardly the kind of person you would find at an Applebee's. People are more upfront with race in Latin America and Costa Rica. Yeah, that's one way of saying it. There's a pale saltine. That's pretty closer. He's more like a Cheeto. I still think he falls in sort of the Cheez-It realm of things. Saltines don't appreciate that at all. They do not. Although his salt content is probably strategically the same. Being criticized for Oriental as opposed to Asian. I'm not seeing where that's attached to that, but I think it's important. Okay, wait. Yep, Hal, heard every mixed race black insult under the sun. Kefir is another one from down there. Yeah. But it can't stop lying. That's a normalized phrase for people who are mixed race down there. I don't know if it's even considered an insult like it is here. It's a very different thing. And like, there's a lot of times when you go someplace and you're on foreign soil and the words they use there that are their norm is very different than, it would be it is the politically correct phrase there. It's very politically incorrect here. So it's, that's important too. And then you go, okay, well, if all cultures being equal, do you start using the phrase colored just because you're down there? I don't think so. I wouldn't. Let's see. Me too, Norman. Language is hardwired. I was watching Odette, and they had a character whose pronouns are they, them, and every time they spoke about her, I had to rewire my brain to understand. Every time I spoke about them, I was confused. Yeah, it sounds like you're talking about someone else and a multitude of someone else. Sorry, Hal, what is your opinion on Oriental versus Asian? Well, Asian is a descriptive of people from a certain region. Oriental would be a period of furniture at this point. He says with Chinese drums going on outside his window. Yeah, I think that, I think the proper phrase is Asian. But then again, I guess I'm in the LGBTQ community plus myself, or it's easy. So this is easier for me. Okay. But my question is, and I don't know what part of that spectrum you fall in, Carrie, technically. What I was pointing out is that there seems to be a fluidity argument in the genderqueer and gender non-binary groups that there seems to be an argument in the gender non-binary groups that the gender binary itself is quote-unquote problematic, that it is a societal construct, that it has no meaning, which would seem to undercut the identity of trans people who genuinely feel, there's an expression, the language issue is easier for me because we talk about this all the time. I'm a lesbian. From the genderqueer argument that I've heard a bunch of them over the last couple months, lesbian in and of itself is a patriarchal defined identity caused by the idea that men and women are something. If you're a lesbian and you don't sleep with a man, it's because it's because of a gender idea you have in your head, not because of your natural inclination. And that's weird. That sounds like what evangelicals say about it. And I don't know that part's been worked out yet, is my point. Of course, Charles Hayden's best hand gestures. Right. Use the pronouns the individual you are talking to prefers. It's called being a decent human being. I completely agree, Brett. Well said. I have no problem with that. Nothing wrong with being polite. This is true. There's a scene in Shameless where they were trying to explain how everyone identified, although it was scripted. It felt like a conversation I've had with my LGBT friends, right? Yes, lesbian is a societal construct. Yeah, that's super weird. Like, I've heard more. Yeah, Elena dating Sid made Elena maybe pansexual. Pansexual is a non-definition, though. Again, it is like genderqueer. Like it's like saying I'm not north, south, east, or west. Well, you're using north, south, east, and west to define yourself. So yeah, you kind of are. You're just in that kind of zone of it, but you're still shoring up the spectrum by saying that, the poles by saying you're somewhere on a spectrum. As you said, how people are still figuring it out. That's exactly right. I think this is, and therefore it's super important to be patient with people as they figure this out too. I think that's my biggest argument, is to not immediately define people who are slow to catch up on this. You're trans fat. Amos, simmer. Then you're not allowed in Canada. Polyamorous is not a sexual definition. It's a behavioral affectation. People will always be figuring it out. Just try not to be rude. There you go. That's a great way to be. See, you're adding yet another dimension I would never consider, Gary. See, this is why we're having the conversation, right? Captain Kirk was definitely heterosexual, but relatively indiscriminating when it came to aliens. Used to get really mad, but now I gently educate people who aren't evil up front. See, that's what I would hope for. But is that entirely because you've met a lot of people who just didn't get it and you could slowly but surely move them back in the right direction? Or was it because you knew enough people in the LGBTQ community that have modified their pronouns over time, where they've changed? They used to like one thing and now they want something, they would rather reference they're between people who've transitioned and detransitioned. There's certainly people in that community that there is a fluctuation. I love the drums. It's great. Kirk let Spock. Yeah. I mean, I think, like I said, you have to go into the uncomfortable parts of a conversation to actually make the progress, I think. See, I wouldn't fall for the green. Who wouldn't fall for a green Orion slave girl? And I'm gay, right? That's right. Just something you got to try once in your life. I think it's because I know how to spot the haters versus the people who haven't been exposed to the wider world enough. Mean no harm. Okay. Do they have mustaches? How do you spot them? Do they have big... Do they twirl their mustaches? You must pay the rent. Is it... act as odd that culturally Asian primarily refers to people from East Asia, isn't it? Shows like Odette have educated so many people. Sorry, I'm missing what's Odette? If you've seen Isle of Dogs, these drum remind me of the opening scene. Yes, Isle of Dogs is wonderful. I love that. That's the other thing too. It's like, and I'm leaving for China in about a week, and I've always been aware because I grew up studying Japanese, Korean, and Chinese martial arts. I love them dearly. I speak Chinese. I learned more. I learned to count in Korean, but I learned more Japanese than I learned Korean. But obviously more Chinese than that. And I know more about Chinese sort of culture and history than I do about Japanese culture and history, and even less so Korean. But while they share kind of holidays and as far as how the calendar is laid out, they're immensely different societies. Oh, one day at a time, right? They're immensely different. We tend to homogenize societies in this weird attempt to of unification. What we ultimately do is kind of dissuade. I went to the Degermerg Academy too. That's so funny. When I was in high school. That's awesome, Mac. So Odad is coming back, Ginger Lexicon channel, and watch the panel discussion. Cool. Let's see. Find the teachings of Bruce Lee. I quoted them last night at a Democratic meeting. Be like water, my friend. It is like a finger pointing to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger. You will miss all of that heavenly glory. Yeah, Bruce Lee was one of the people who taught me very early that an accent doesn't is not an indicator of education. It's an indicator that that person speaks two languages and you don't. He was clearly one of my heroes growing up. Be like water, my friend. Put water in a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water in a bottle, it becomes the bottle. Now, water can flow or it can crash. Be like water, my friend. I have all of his individual books. I read them when I was 13 years old. There's a queer woman-focused convention called Lexicon that had its second year of programming, and watching their panels was so uplifting. That's cool. Klexicon? Yeah, don't get me started on Bruce and Brandon. Just gut-wrenching. Microgreens or Bruce Lee in photo hanging next to me. That's awesome. Winona Earp is so damn awesome too. Cool. You can watch Bruce Lee movies on the El Rey channel. Yeah. Well, I have all of them. I own the entire. I have one of those like box sets. The Crow, Rapid Fire, absolutely. I can't. It's hard for me to watch The Crow. It's heartbreaking. The comic writer of The Crow wanted them to cast a female as The Crow in the sequel. Yeah, I can see why not. I mean, it's a supernatural force, so it doesn't matter. It's not like, anyone could, have this reaction. They rise from the dead and have supernatural powers. So, it's not like we've ever had a problem with, like, female mummies or anything like that. Like, this is, it's a norm that fits anyone. It's about, you haven't seen The Crow in years. Just a reminder, folks, there's a meteor shower tonight. Thank you, Carl. I'll have to remind me to buy soap. It's a solid conversation. I'm glad we started having that today. I feel like I should like this. We can kind of make a process of having a furthering the conversation each time. Yeah, I can't watch The Crow. The part in The Crow that's the most devastating because Brandon was just he'd just gotten engaged. He was going to get married after the movie, and Ernie Hudson says to him when he's leaving his apartment in this one scene where he visits him, and he goes, "Sorry about what happened to you and your girlfriend," and Brandon as the Crow just turns to him and goes, "Yeah," and then just leaves. And it's heartbreaking considering what happened in real life. It's just gut-wrenching, this moment. Soon. I can't wait till the new one. Charlene works on One Day at a Time, by the way. She's a stand-in on the show, and she does little bits on there as well. So I'm glad you guys like it so much because it's, it's fascinating. And, yeah. Murphy Brown's coming back. Yeah, they cast him to play your son all right. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah. Like, it's just in time for Queer as Folk to never get a full reunion. Like, all these other shows, they brought back the L Word and all this stuff. And they're bringing back Murphy Brown and One Day at a Time. And, we'll never get the time of day. It's, honestly. Like, I don't know how. Like, we're doing that Entertainment Weekly thing. Maybe that'll jumpstart the idea. But, I'm so dubious at this point. Yeah, Charlene works on the show. Didn't have time to hit on the Kim Jong-un story about ending the nuclear weapons test. Maybe I was getting coffee. No, Bob, we didn't talk about that. And you know how much bull... All right. So... yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to touch on this week, but we never got to it because we had other stuff to cover, and I had that whole 10-second. Okay, so this is a Reuters story. I'm back. This is a Reuters story from October 12th, 2017. A series of tremors and landslides near North Korea's nuclear test base likely mean the country's sixth and largest blast has destabilized the region, and the Pyongyang nuclear site may not be used for much longer to test nuclear weapons, experts say. A small quake was detected on early Friday near the North's nuclear test site, South Korea's weather agency said, but unlike quakes associated with nuclear tests, it did not appear to be man-made. The tremor was the latest in a string of at least 3 shocks to be observed since Pyongyang's September 3rd nuclear test, which caused a 6.3 magnitude earthquake. There have been 3 more this year. There's one in January and 2 in February. 2.7, at 2.9, and I think at 2.6. Basically, they didn't do seismic tests before they tested bombs in the area, and they friggin' destabilized their own fault line. So if they can't test anywhere else in the country because they need the land. So they're not. And the other thing is they've got nuclear bombs now, and they've got ballistic missiles that will travel as far as Washington, they said. So why would you keep testing? You're done. Now you're producing them. So that in and of itself, I found incredibly irritating. That people bought that piece of fung pee that was sprayed around. Entertainment Weekly is a magazine, but they may have shot video of the QAF interview. We haven't done it yet. We do it Monday. It's a magazine. We're doing a photo spread and some other stuff. Yeah, Gary's dead. Todd Bridges is the only living member of the base cast of Different Strokes. Which country was that? North Korea. Oh, that's cool. Can't Stop Lying. I appreciate that. Let us know if they do video. I will. I'll shoot some video from there too. I'll see if I can stream something from it. That'd be kind of fun. One of the Odad episodes was directed by Kimberly McCullough, who played Robin on General Hospital. She's half Mexican. What's her other half? Which half? The half that eats? Or the half that excretes? It's a half joke that we always have in my family because of the amount of native blood we have in us. He shoots video of these kind of interviews. We'll see. Yeah, it'd be nice. Wait, yeah. Yeah, I always think it's funny when people say I'm half something and don't say what their other half is or what their other half makes up. You know, I think it's, her mom's family's is from Mexico, I suppose, and I never knew that until recently. Cool. I'm all signed up on Ancestry. Thanks for the tips, folks. There you go. Anything is possible. How I've lived my life and how I've become friends with. That's absolutely true. My kid is half Costa Rican and half Irish or whatever I am. We knew what you meant, Carrie. We knew Mexican wasn't a country. It's all good. Yeah, so what I was reading about the North Koreans is they didn't do seismic tests in the area they were doing their nuclear tests in, and they just set off the nuclear bombs, and then they destabilized the entire northern part of their of North Korea by blowing up nuclear bombs under the ground. And they've set off a series of 6 earthquakes, and they've had 3 in the last 2 months alone. And it doesn't look like it's going to settle anytime soon. It's like they blew off a big chunk of stone, and nothing's there to keep the tectonic plate there from sliding. So that's why they're stopping the nuclear tests. The haves have it, yeah. Half donuts, half soda. That's half donuts, half soda is probably closer to the truth about people's experience. I don't know why we can't see another season and eat Porto soon and have a diverse writer's room. See, Carrie, that's the most important thing. Like, directors, especially in television, only do so much. And especially in episodic television. And this is somebody who's I've directed episodic television. I've been in over nearly 200 episodes of episodic television with varying directors. Their input is emotional and has to supersede anybody's identity. I got to run a few minutes. Hal, are you out after today? No, I'll have a show next Saturday. There will be a show next Saturday. I don't leave until the day after, even the Monday, I think. But the writer's room is the most important part of it. It is more important than anywhere. And the same thing is true of movies. All the problems I had with Wonder Woman all stemmed from effectively the writing, and having a female director did not fix them. because it was either too late in the process or she didn't see or care enough to deal with them, or thought that they were proper, which is entirely possible. You know, all the things about Wonder Woman that would be technically problematic from a female stereotype standpoint were not cleaned up by having a female director. You got to be in there on the ground floor. The ideas themselves have to come from female writers, and there have to be female writers involved in the process of the writing, so that the voices are more indicative. Seems like the same movie as Captain America the First. I love Wonder Woman. Seems like the same movie as Captain America the First Avenger. Both had shields, both had the group of commandos, both in World Wars. Yeah, there was an intrinsic difference, though, which is that Steve Rogers is a human being, helped by science, and Wonder Woman is a goddess. Is everyone going to be there, Hal? I think so. I think everybody is going to be there. My greatest issue with the Wonder Woman is the lackluster bad guy. I have a myriad of problems with it. Like I said, I think it's the most misogynistic film that's been made in the last 10 years, but that's just me. I had some problems with Black Panther in that the women can never rule Wakanda because they're women. Yeah, and the fact that it's basically the Saudi royal family, and the fact that they walled off. It's hard to argue that against Trump's wall if you're for the Wakandan barrier, and the fact that the asteroid came from space and gave them vibranium. It wasn't something they invented or something they refined out of nothing, which would have been a better storyline, I think. Would have been a better indicative of the power of the people themselves. It just meant that they were born on top of gold. Yeah, and the idea of royalty going through a bloodline is they needed to spend more time on in Wonder Woman. Why? I need to be enlightened on which things. Yeah. And yet they're highly evolved socially in a monarchy. And yeah, it's weird. It was a cake and eat it too problem, Carl, that I had with that. And it's and there's some internalized problems with the Marvel storylines that continues through all of them. And it seems to be this through line: don't try too hard, and if you try too hard, you'll create the problems in the world instead of solving them. And you see this with the first Iron Man, where he creates his own villain just by creating the suit. Arguably, the plot of Black Panther is the plot of Iron Man 2. The sins of the father create the violent opposition, and who's the rightful heir to the technology? Let's see. They needed to spend more time on, which was the worst part based on fan and reviewer reaction to Wonder Woman. Well, this weird insular, yeah. Thanks, Tom. Be well. How when you're gone, will anyone substitute for you, or there be reruns? I'm working on who will fill in. I'm hoping Johnny Million can do it. I'd love Jackie Scheckner to be able to do it, but we'll see. Any chance you're doing UJN again before you leave? There's a possibility. I haven't been asked this week, but that would be the only time. Yeah, the hyper tribalism stuff in life right now is not made better when it's portrayed in storylines. And I think the one of the great things about Captain America, the first Avenger, is the strength of Agent Carter, the diversity of his team, the brotherhood aspect of the storyline, the standing up to bullies and never backing down even when you take a licking. Like, all that stuff is terrific. I wanted to see more of the women in Wonder Woman, and that was the island. They're yeah. Yeah. Okay. No one's going to call you racist for not liking Black Panther, Carl. Yeah. No, like the only reason you would be upset about anything in Black Panther is the same thing only reason you'd be upset about something in Wonder Woman. I think from a decent human point of view is that you'd want it to be better. You know, you could see where it could be fixed fairly easily. These are small problems that cut big holes in the plot or in the character that is unfortunate. Yeah, and and Carrie, I don't know what is helped Wonder Woman suffer from writing that was done pre Patty Jenkins coming on board. I agree, but some of it was stuff she could have easily fixed. The little lines of dialogue change, little alterations would have made great changes. And ultimately, the problem with Wonder Woman is the problem with Superman. She's not a woman. Superman's not a man. And the whole thing falls apart with the Batman line. Batman destroys. There's a line that Batman says when he's fighting Superman in Batman versus Superman, which is gods aren't brave, men are brave. And what he means is humans are brave, but you get the point. The idea is that he doesn't know what bravery or loss is, and he's got to kill him. He's got to die, essentially, and he doesn't. He friggin' comes back. You can see it when he's in the thing at the end. So even in dying, he's not really dying. So, and the same thing with with Wonder Woman. She's not a woman. She isn't. Again, it's more of a trans story, if anything. She presents as female, but at no point is she, implicitly a human. She doesn't have any of the problems women have. She's bulletproof. Like, once you're bulletproof, you're not a person anymore. Once you're, effectively incapable of dying on any regular scale, if you're a god. And so gods at a certain point, they have aspirational characteristics as a perfect version of aspirational humanity, but they are by no means equatable to human characteristics. They're fun to play when you're a kid, but they run out of. No Man's Land was the best part of the movie outside of the Island Seas. I thought the No Man's Land stuff was horrifying. Because, I've said before, a superhero is a monster that's on your side. And she deflects the bullets for other people, but she is bulletproof. You can't shoot her. She deflects them because she can directionally refract them so they don't hit other people. Yes, Wonder Woman does not have a menstrual cycle. This is true. Right. Wonder Woman is, and when she's walking, she's like the No Man's Land shot where she's basically walking across No Man's Land like it's a runway at Fashion Week, while all these not bulletproof guys behind her are getting shot to pieces. Yeah. Yes, exactly, Milkman Norm. Yeah. And the whole and talk about the missed opportunity. Okay, so this is one of the big problems. So she had the sword that was the God Killer, right? And then she smashes it into his hand and she says, it's not the God Killer, you're the God Killer. I'm like, first of all, they took all the danger out. That this sword that could have killed her too could have turned on her. The obvious phallic representation of the sword itself is totally tossed out the window and takes all the jeopardy out of it. Chris Pine's character is the hero of Wonder Woman. He's the only person who sacrifices his life. She's just on a, and then she totally contradicts her own character, which is nothing matters. This human war is nothing. We must stop Ares, right? That's who they used, right? We must stop him. All this other stuff didn't matter. And then they're going through the trenches and through the village, and she seems like, oh, this one baby. And Chris Pine says, look, you can't get too focused on these people. It's the big picture. We got to win the war to stop all the killing. That should have been her line. She should have been saying that to him. He should have been trying to treat a soldier or going like, we have to go back to him. She goes, look, you're going to do nothing but go back for people unless we stop this, right? It's Zack Snyder's fault that Chris Pine's character was amplified. Either a female director matters or she doesn't. You know, and either she has control over it and directing is a primacy, has primacy in filmmaking, or it doesn't. And there's nothing wrong with Chris Pine's character sacrificing himself and disappearing, but her kind of shrugging it off after a time and just being kind of whimsically looking at a picture at the end. There was no emotional connection to the fact that he made that sacrifice, or that she needs. All she did was friggin' quit. After he died, Patty Jenkins did get good performances out of the actors in Wonder Woman. Sure, but that's like saying the actors weren't there to give good performances. She had to fight the studio to get things, the movie she wanted, because of misogyny. Have a great time in China. I gotta run now, Natalie. Thank you, Natalie, so much. Yeah, I don't doubt it, but I also think because of, you know, I don't know that she considered certain of these things kind of, maybe she didn't think them through, or she didn't care. My problem with Wonder Woman was the actress, although very pretty, had no muscularity whatsoever. I think I've heard that argument. It's not necessary, like I said, because she's a god, so it doesn't matter what her muscles look like. This is just a physical manifestation of a super, you know, of a non-human. So whoever. Remember, she is the first woman to direct $100+ million movie. Yeah, which would guarantee that she had control over a good portion of that. And again, Kathleen Kennedy has made some of the most amazing. There is no Aliens, there is no Terminator, there is no umpteen different movies without her. And she managed to patch holes as a producer and stuff that would have messed up. And Ava DuVernay is the second woman with A Wrinkle in Time, which did horribly, unfortunately. They're trying to make her ignorant to the outside world, maybe. Chris Pine was supposed to be her guide to humanity, I guess, or something. Yeah, I know. That's the problem. It wasn't really. But again, she had a singular mission. Kill Ares. It doesn't matter this fickle human fight. Problem with Wonder Woman taking a century off from heroics was created by the continuity of Batman v Superman. I agree, but you could have, you know, she could have kept hidden starting 10 years later or something, or kept underground, or, you know, yeah. Galen Hurd has made more to do with Aliens than any other producer in terms of the on-set involvement. Absolutely, and Galen Hurd is amazing as well. There are no, you know, the two of them, those two women are probably the most powerful women in Hollywood history. And especially in the sci-fi world. I mean, incredible work. And again, look at Aliens. Aliens, they literally, Ripley became a female character because they wrote the character as a great character, and then one of the people at the studio was like, I might be dense, but is Ripley a man or a woman? And the two writers were literally on the phone with each other, like Woodward and Bernstein, covered the phone and went, a woman? Cool, okay. And they were like, shit, all right, that's great. I loved it, felt it very empowering. Great. So are you telling me that the original Hercules Samson movies would have been just fine with Charlie Chaplin playing the lead instead of Steve Reeves? No, well, no, because Hercules and Samson are specific masculine stereotypes. And they're demigods, technically. I guess so is Wonder Woman in that regard. But I certainly would have seen that. But, like, there's a lot of this going around lately where even the dudes, even, like, the guy on, what's his name? Or like one of the like there's a couple of Marvel ones, you know, where the guys just look like hipsters who've never done a push-up, and they're making them, you know, superheroes, and it's like, all right, well, that's what The Matrix does for you. They made the most daring movies in terms of story and modern sensibilities around sex. Absolutely. I mean, you look at the first Terminator movie. You talk about a strong female character. She's the one with the growth arc. She's the one. I mean, she literally finds her strength. You've got the Michael Biehn character who's been known nothing but war his entire life, who finds love with her, right? Which is a great arc for a male character. And then you have the Sarah Connor character, you know, finding in herself a strength that she never knew she had, you know, and to the point where she says, "On your feet, soldier," you know, at the end, which is terrific. Wonder Woman has never been drawn with bodybuilder proportions, just lean, athletic to somewhat voluptuous, right? Well, she's, you know, there've been striated muscular versions of her, which are much more akin to some of the Spider-Man comics. If you ever watched if you ever read some of the Spectacular Spider-Mans, like mid-90s or whatever, they make him really lean and really striated, not bulky. It's, you know, it's the same kind of equivalent there. I'm talking about movies made pre-30s that women did. They were revolutionary, and then the prudish men inserted themselves into the process and rolled back movie making by decades. Yeah, agreed. I mean, there was advances made in women's rights in the 20s that we've almost completely forgotten about. Even in sexuality. I mean, you could argue that AIDS and heroin in the 90s, 80s, 90s, and in the 20s, respectively, 20s and 30s, set back, you know, sexual identity politics by 100 years. That was Spider-Man's McFarlaneization period. Absolutely. Amazon Prime, the tick is amazing. Also, Miss Curry reminds me of young Naomi Watts. That's cool. Woman has never been drawn. Okay. I feel out of touch with all the behind-the-scenes info. I guess I've let my theater knowledge atrophy since my Northwestern days, right? Women used to write the computer code until the early 1970s, when personal computers began to be marketed as a toy for boys. Oh, wow. Wait a minute. What? Apparently, I've got to go somewhere. I got to go perform, guys. It's always, why do I always have another something to do? You guys are awesome. Got to sign off. Thanks for sticking around. We'll see you next time. I got to go sing, apparently. So I will see you guys soon. Take care of yourselves and take care of somebody else. Bye.